Okay, so we're now at item D. Is there any other item for any other discussion on approval of the agenda? Okay, so item D is council reorganization. City council reorganization. The first item is the administration of the oath of office for Matt Hawkins, council member for your term, double I, Mark Plummer, council member for your term, and triple I, and Segerstrom, council member for your term. So with that, do I turn over to you, Mary Rose, or do I go directly to the judge?
Introduce Judge Segerstrom. So the first agenda item is to administer the oath of office to our 3 newly elected and 2 newly re-elected council members, and presiding judge of Tuolumne County Superior Court, Judge Segerstrom, will be administering the oath of office to our 3 council members. So if you will, Councilmember-elect Segerstrom, if you would, and Councilmember Plummer and Councilmember Hawkins, I think we can ask you to stand while you're
Yes, please.
And Judge Segerstrom is with us via Zoom, and he will be administering the oath of office via Zoom.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to appear. I would have preferred to appear in person, but it's really an honor to be able to swear in members of the City Council. Congratulations to Councilmember Plummer, Councilmember Hawkins, Matt, and Mark. Congratulations on your public service and your willingness to serve another term. Good luck in your service. And to my sister, I honestly wish I could be there in person, Ann. It's a great moment for our family. Our family has a history of public service in Tuolumne County going back to our great-grandfather. But I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first time that a person with the last name of Segerstrom has ever served on the City Council. So you're breaking new ground here. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of you to raise your right hand, and I will ask you to repeat after me. I'm going to first say I, and then I want you to say your name. So I. Say your name, please. Each of you say your name out loud.
Ladies first.
Ann Segerstrom.
Matt Hawkins. Mark Plummer.
Do solemnly swear. Repeat after me. Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties.
Discharge the duties.
Upon which I am about to enter.
About which I am about to enter.
My congratulations to all of you. I wish I was there in person to shake your hands. Congratulations.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Judge
so much.
Segers.
Thank you.
Thank you for the honor and privilege of allowing me to swear in the new council member.
You bet.
And Mayor, and for the record now, Councilmember Segerstrom would be a voting member of the council going forward.
Right.
And Councilmember Sagerstrom, if you wouldn't mind sitting a little bit forward and leaning in a little bit so we can see you a little bit better on video. Thank you. You're perfect. I just want to make sure we see Councilmember Sagerstrom. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready for item 2? Item 2 is consideration to, oh, I'm sorry. Is there more?
Yes, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor.
Item 2 is consideration to select the mayor of Sonora, 2-year term.
I will nominate Mayor Pro Tem Matt Hawkins to be our next mayor.
Second. Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Plummer and seconded by Councilmember Such to appoint the Mayor Pro Tem Matt Hawkins as the next mayor of the city of Sonora. Is there any discussion? We do public comment and all that, right? Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. So is there any questions for staff?
I would just
No.
make the comment, Mayor, we can hear you really well, but if the rest of you can lean into the microphone when you talk, because of the mass, it does make it a little bit difficult to hear you. So just as a FYI.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? And Doug, you might want to go through the procedure of how we do public comment.
Yeah, so if you want to engage in public comment, please, if you're on a regular phone, press *9. Otherwise, if you are on a phone, iPad, or some kind of computer, go down to participants, and at the bottom of that, there'll be a raise your hand function. Press that button and it'll let me know that you want to speak, and then we'll call on you. So with that, please press *9. And if you'd like to speak and or press the raise your hand button on your device.
Okay, public comment on selection of the mayor of Sonora. So Doug, I'm not hearing anything.
I'm
see
not
anything?
seeing anything, Mayor.
Okay.
If people are having trouble, if you wave your hand on the screen, I will also recognize you that way. So just let me scroll through real quick. I don't see anybody waving their hands or raising their hands. Mayor.
Okay. All right. So with that, is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Oh, we got to do roll call. I'm sorry. Mary Rose.
Mayor Garaventa,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
I guess I vote on this one. Aye.
Councilmember Plummer,
Aye.
Councilmember Such,
Aye.
and Councilmember Sagerstrom.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Mr. Hawkins, you are now the mayor of Sonora.
Congratulations, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I shall present to you the gavel.
Wow. Put this down.
Just get situated here for a second and I will, excellent. Okay, so item number D2,
D3.
D3, excuse me. Consideration to confirm the mayor's selection of Mayor Pro Tem for a 2-year term. So the city council goes back, I believe when I talked to Ronnie Stern, it was about 1972 that the city council took turns for mayor pro tem and that sort of thing. So in keeping with that tradition, I would love and be honored to have Mark Plummer as the next mayor pro tem. So I make that motion.
Second.
So as I get in here, is there any public comment about Mayor Pro Tem?
So for those who'd like to speak, again, press the *9 button or use the raise your hand feature on your device. And if you're looking for that, it's under the participant button, or you can wave your hand profusely in the screen, then I will recognize you that way. Mayor, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, excellent. When you said mayor, I'm getting ready to look over at Jim, so. Okay, so is there any other council discussion? Okay, so I guess we do a roll call vote.
Okay, so Mayor Hawkins,
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa,
Aye.
Councilmember Such,
Aye.
Councilmember Plummer,
Aye.
and Councilmember Segerstrom.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the honor.
No, thank you. I look forward to working together. Okay, so since we've put item number E, public comment, to the end of the agenda, so we're going to go to item number F, consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be voted on in one motion unless a council member or members of the public has a question or wishes to discuss an item. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar, considered separately. Number one, approval of disbursements in the amount of $161,137.75 for payroll, inclusive employee salaries, employer and employee taxes, and retirement contributions, and miscellaneous voluntary employee deductions. And that's the only one on the consent calendar. Any questions? Yes.
Supposed to say my name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm new at this. Sorry, Councilmember Such, any questions?
Yeah, there's a big increase in this, so I would like that explained, please.
Sure,
Sorry.
Councilmember Such. So if you recall, these disbursements are during the time in which we held the June 3rd protests. So we had quite a bit of overtime worked by our officers. So those hours are reflected in those payments.
Okay, thought so, but just wanted that to be clear. Thanks.
Okay, so no other council comment. Any public comment on the consent calendar?
Again, if you'd like to participate, please press *9 on your phone or hit the raise your hand button on the device that you're using.
Do you see any, Doug?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to the council.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll move on consent calendar to approve it.
Second.
Can you,
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer,
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa,
Aye.
Councilmember Such,
Aye.
and Councilmember Segerstrom.
Aye.
Okay, so item number G, there's no public hearings. Item number H, unfinished business, informal item to discuss Governor Newsom's executive order N-33-20, requiring all citizens to stay at home unless needed to maintain operation of essential critical infrastructures.
So this is our continuing item that we have every council meeting in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. The last meeting was on June 15th, so there's been quite a bit of development since June 15th. As we are all aware, because we are all wearing them, masks are now required of every individual when they are indoor. So that is why you see all of our council members and myself wearing masks. Also, masks are required of those for individuals when they are outside, but they cannot maintain 6 feet social distancing or physical distancing. So again, the requirement of the mask requirement was put into play after our last meeting. And then, as I'm sure all the council members are aware, we're seeing a steady and quite drastic increase to our COVID-19 cases. And this is almost on a daily basis now, where we're seeing anywhere between 8 to 10 cases daily jumping. We just, over this last weekend, saw an additional 10 cases. On Friday, we were at 43. Today, Public Health announced that we are at 53 cases. So we want to remember to caution all residents to please, please, please wear your mask while you're indoors. Please wear your mask if you're outdoors and cannot maintain 6 feet of distance between you and another person. Also, to please make sure that you are still restricting your travel. We see quite a bit of people coming from out of county up here, especially for the holiday weekend. And then also, we want to make sure that you're washing your hands, taking your temperature, and not participating in any undue gatherings that have a large amount of people from outside of that social bubble that public health has asked you to stay within. So that is the update for today. We anticipate now that we have community transmission that our numbers will rise. We're also seeing that the governor has asked or required, mandated 19 counties to close, quote unquote, close back down businesses. So the state is watching, watching transmission at the county by county basis. So there are 19 counties right now that retail and restaurants, or excuse me, restaurants and bars are closed again. And a lot of those valley counties, our neighboring valley counties, have closed again. So just want to be cognizant of that fact. And then City Attorney Douglas White, if you have any additional comments.
Yeah, I want to add a couple things. We also know that the governor has put together a task force of Cal OSHA and of alcohol and beverage to go out and take away licenses of businesses that are operating without following the guidelines. And they've also got task force together of the CHP to go into jurisdictions where law enforcement refuses to enforce these rules. They haven't used that yet, except for in the beaches down in Southern California, but they do have a task force prepared to come and do that. And the legislature also gave the governor the ability to deny jurisdictions that don't enforce these orders any kind of FEMA funding or other CARES recovery money if they're not going to enforce the orders. So they have a task force for the state to come in and enforce the orders and take away the money from the jurisdictions that aren't doing that. And candidly, masks are probably the only hope that we have of businesses being able to continue to stay open under the orders. Doesn't really matter whether or not you agree with it or not. It's the only real hope that you can of keeping the numbers down so that the state doesn't come down and just mandate that you have these requirements. And I want to remind everybody, one of the reasons that these are important is for businesses that operate when they're not supposed to, they have absolutely zero insurance coverage for any incident that happens, even for normal incidents that happen that would otherwise be covered that have nothing to do with COVID. So if you're mandated to be closed and you operate a business and somebody slips and falls, if you were supposed to be closed, you have absolutely no insurance coverage during that period of time. And you can imagine the economic impact above and beyond everything else that can have. So just a word of caution, the masks are really, I look at it at this point in time as the best bet that we have to help our businesses stay open. And that's kind of that. I mean, none of this is within our control or within our jurisdiction. This is all pretty much happening at the state level. But if we take actions, people should understand why.
We lost part of that because you locked up the last sentence which you said.
I said, if we're taking actions, I want people to have a good understanding as to why. So that's why, and those are some of the motivators that are going on and some of the things that are being mandated on us as a jurisdiction. I will say that follows a line of cases that came back from the redevelopment law when the state came in and took local government money in the redevelopment stuff, and it said that cities are a creature of the state. So unlike states being creatures of the federal government, cities are much different. Under the Constitution, states are really what is recognized, not necessarily cities. And so the ability to kind of govern ourselves is really emanated from the state. So the state has wide authority to come in and exercise authority within our jurisdiction. So I just wanted to give everybody some background on what's going on, and happy to answer any questions council has.
Mr. Plummer.
Doug, on how the state weights, the closing of the county and making it more difficult on business, how do they weigh increasing? I see we've dropped 100% in our hospitalizations, which I thought of as great news. weighed against 10 new cases in just the last day, you said?
Over the weekend.
Okay, over the weekend. So how is that weighed by the state? Do you know? Because,
Yeah, so it's complex because I mean, one of the things that they'll look at is the ICU and hospital capacity that we have in Sonora, but it won't be just Sonora and the Tuolumne County that will be taken into consideration because those hospitals service a larger area. As an example, I represent Angels Camp. San Joaquin County reached capacity at their ICUs and hospital facilities over the weekend and over the July 4th weekend. So that's not available. So those people would be, only option would be to come to Sonora. And I can tell you that several hospitals in Stanislaus County in the ICU hit max capacity as well. And they had to transport patients around based off of what symptoms that they were having and so on and so forth. Now, in all candor, some of those capacity issues has to do with staffing issues because it's not just us normal folk who get sick. You know, the health workers are much more likely to get sick or get infected and they are taken out of the workers pool in many cases during the time that they are unhealthy or contagious. So part of the impact that we're having has not to do with whether or not there's enough beds. It has to do with whether or not there's enough workers, healthcare workers, to assist them. So I can tell you, because of who we represent, those are real issues going on in both San Joaquin and Stanislaus County, and that will be taken into consideration when figuring out what the capacity is in Sonora. Because as those hospitals hit capacity, they will start to ship out of area patients up to Sonora to use the ventilators and ICU capacity.
would that include shutting down our businesses because Stanislaus County is going to heck?
Yes, meaning that if you start shutting down businesses where there's a demonstrated or shown level of infection or higher likelihood of infection, when you don't have enough hospital beds to take care of the people who get sick, in particular the ventilators in the ICU capacity. So we're specifically looking at those two key factors. So you don't want it to be an Italy situation where you're literally having to put two people on a ventilator and share the ventilator because you don't have enough equipment. In Tuolumne County, if I'm correct, we only have 10 ventilators. So we have a very limited capacity to help people. It doesn't take much to have all of those offline and not usable.
Precisely, but what I'm hearing is that we could be punished following all the rules as required for just a bad outbreak in Stanislaus if they start sending up more people and overload our hospital where we no longer have capacity. Is that correct?
I mean, well, it's partly correct. I mean, if there's no room at the hospitals, they're going to shut down areas where they know that there's community transmission going on, or a high likelihood of community transmission. That it doesn't matter if it's in Sonora or if it's in Stanislaus. So higher risk areas, bars being one of the really good examples, those are one of the ones that are really likely to get shut down in Sonora because we know that there's community transmission that's happening in bars for some reason. I still don't really understand why, but through the tracing, it's been demonstrated that that's happening. So yeah, if there's not enough hospital beds to take care of them, and ICU units and ventilators, you could be punished. I wouldn't use the word punished, but we got to make sure that there's a place for people to go.
And I don't blame you, but that's my word. And the reason I'm trying to get clarity on this is because the public may find that they want to react to Sacramento, since by and large, we're doing pretty well. So, okay, thank you very much. I'm done.
Councilmember Such.
Could I ask you to please sit back because you essentially blocked me? Well, you can sit, you don't have to back up, but when you sit sideways, you completely block me. I just would like to add that we are actually at capacity, not in terms of healthcare personnel or beds, but we're at capacity at testing and we're at capacity at contact tracing. So it's not just that Stanislaus County is blowing up. We can't manage the cases, the 53 cases we have. We can't do the contact tracing, and with every new case, testing is delayed another day or two. Now it's like 10 days out. So we're not being punished. It's actually what is going on in our community that contributes to this.
And we are having new issues that we didn't have before. We are having people refuse to participate or in the contact tracing, which is creating some additional issues, including we know people are going to parties who have fevers and then mass infecting people, unfortunately. I mean, we have a lot of information out there. I can tell you that if people would just stay home when they're sick,
Exactly.
No,
And-
not exactly.
then it would really, really help, because that would help a lot. So,
Yeah, Ed. Yeah, Doug, there's a lot of asymptomatic transmission here. Just staying home when you're sick isn't enough.
I don't mean to imply
Well-
that it's
Well,
enough.
just stay home when you're sick. It's, we can't
we-
drop masking and we can't drop asymptomatic transmission.
Correct, but we are seeing people, unfortunately, I know several specific examples of people going to parties who are sick and then getting entire, like particularly family gathering situations, and they're getting people sick. Those are ones that are, in my mind, extremely preventable because they actually have symptoms, right? The asymptomatic is a little bit more complicated because of the fact that the people don't know that they're sick, and that's where the masks really come in and have shown some help.
So question I had, Doug, is you mentioned that about funding going away for jurisdictions that don't enforce. And I could see a scenario where it may not be as well enforced in the county as it could be in the city. And is that money passed through? Are we stuck on that, or?
And I could talk to that a little bit,
Yep.
Doug, if you want me to. So we just got noticed about a couple days ago that cities are now eligible to receive CARES Act funding. And that CARES Act funding, though, is reliant on the fact that the county is ensuring that they are compliant with all of the state orders. So our city funding is also reliant on the county compliancy. So we have to certify that we're compliant, but we're also having to be reliant on the county ensuring that they are in compliance as well. So yes.
So there could be a scenario where we do mandated stuff and the county may not fully do that and get in trouble, and we would lose funding.
Well, what I have been seeing from county public health is that they are following the guidance of the governor
Right.
to the letter. So I'm not seeing where we're out of compliance with the governor at this moment, the governor's orders. Public health is following those mandates and following those guidance.
Okay.
But I just wanted the council to be aware.
So it's
that-
public health that certifies.
Yeah, we certify.
Okay.
And then but also the state is going to be looking, because our funding goes through, the county mechanism. They're
Right.
also going to be looking at how the county is implementing the guidelines. Now,
Right.
of course, we talk about enforcement. Enforcement's a different issue.
Okay.
Because the enforcement the enforcement of that is a completely different issue. You've got an elected sheriff, obviously,
Mhm.
that is outside the elected supervisors.
Mhm.
But as far as public health, following the guidelines of the state, right now we are. I will say,
Sure.
remember we heard about in the beginning, those counties that opened up outside of what the governor, that's what they're really kind of looking at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
And we've had police chiefs and other sheriffs who've come out and said that they're not going to enforce it. And I will say a couple of weeks ago, those voices were a little bit louder. And so unfortunately, the Highway Patrol Task Force that was originally tasked with kind of helping out in the Southern California beach scenario, there's been a little bit more meat put on those bones, so to speak, to ready them to kind of deal with the situation if they have to. I don't believe that this is more for information for the council and for the public. I don't believe that that's an issue that we will ever face in Sonora or even Tuolumne County. But it's important that everybody has a full breadth of information. So I want us to all be working with the same set of information.
Yep.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Doug, I'll ask you one more question about all of this, and this kind of correlates more for information. At the end of this month, the unemployment benefits from the federal government run out, is there any word of any continuation of that, or a lesser or more amount, that sort of thing? I'm actually getting a lot of phone calls about that.
So that's all being done at the federal level, and there is word of continuation of that. And there's also discussion about a second round of additional kind of PPP funding, style funding for businesses. And I think that that would be largely targeted at the businesses that are most impacted: movie theaters, bars, gyms, restaurants, that frankly are taking the biggest hit in terms of being asked to close. So the ones that have been the hardest to open and the ones that we've had asked to close, the federal government is looking at doing a second round of potentially forgivable PPP type funding. So it's a loan that can be potentially forgiven in whole based off of certain criteria. That has not been passed yet, to my knowledge, but I know that there's a lot of discussion about it. And I suspect that there's going to be something in some degree that comes out, particularly targeted to bars, gyms, and restaurants.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Mr. Mayor, on that note, I read just, I think, 2 days ago that California will be extending the unemployment benefits another at least 4 weeks.
Yeah, get closer.
Yeah.
No, I just
You're
get
on.
closer.
You're on.
So I'm pretty confident that I read that the California benefits will be extended for an additional 4 weeks at least.
okay, excellent. That's good. I mean, there's a lot of people. I know that, well, all of our constituents, many of them work retail jobs and that sort of thing, and they've been shut down. My wife, as of 3 weeks ago, got told 22 hours before her shift was supposed to start that, hey, you've got to start another shift. And she's like, well, what do I do with our kids? And it was coronavirus related. So now she's out of a job, and luckily she was able to attain unemployment. But, we'd all rather work. I mean, we'd rather do something and produce. So it's a Band-Aid. It's a necessary Band-Aid, but thank you, Doug, for the information.
And I will say that this information, I mean, what we're doing in California isn't unique to California. It's actually much, much more aggressive in places like Texas and Arizona in particular right now. And I would even use Florida has had to really scale back. So those seem to be California, Arizona, Texas, and Florida seem to be the real hot spots right now. It's no longer kind of New York and the East Coast. So anyway, what we're doing isn't unique in that respect.
I thought all the experts told us that we were going to see it diminish with a little bit of warmth.
Not the experts.
Yeah.
They didn't say that.
Well, it's airborne regardless of the temperature.
Any other council comment or questions? Okay. Do I ask for public comment on this since it's an information item?
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So any public comment on Executive Order N3320?
And again, there's no action that can be taken right now. This is just a matter of public comment. So if you want to speak, please press *9 or use the raise your hand function on the device that you're using. So Mayor, we do have one. Russ H. has raised his hand. I'm going to unmute him.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Yeah, hey, I thank you for opening it up to public comment. I just wanted to make a question. I mean, I appreciate and respect the position that everybody in the council members and the attorney and judges and sheriffs and policemen, and I respect the position that everybody's in when it talks about funding and finances. It definitely is a peculiar position that people are put in. However, I think it's important to say from the side of the public that people should be able to choose their health needs as a family, as an individual, as part of constitutional rights. And, if my understanding is correct, I know that the governor's order went into effect sometime mid-March, was supposed to end once the immediate threat was contained or 60 days thereafter. So from my understanding, I could be wrong, but I thought the executive order had ended as far as the immediate threat being eliminated, and as well as the time limit that he's constrained under to hold such order in effect. I understand everybody's arguments. I've been studying a lot. I'm OSHA 30 certified. I have done a lot of research in all of this. On a personal level, I won't allow my daughter to wear a mask throughout her school day. She will not be attending public school if that is a continued mandate, that type of thing. I believe that in our county, I believe we'll see a lot of that. So, again, I appreciate the position that you guys are in, and you're talking about following the orders. However, he's written no such order. I mean, as far as I understand, if you look at his website, he's never added on or, said that you have to wear a mask or that you have to do this or do that. He said it on air, and the media took and did it. And I think a lot of people have changed their tune on that. It's called it as guidelines. They've called it as strongly recommended, but they haven't called it an actual fact that you have to do. And I don't do. Not that I don't care about people. I love people. I'm a resident of Tuolumne County. I've lived here for 35 plus years. And I do care about my community. I think more than I do. Anyways, I don't have to validate that, but I do. I really do care about my community and people. But at the same time, I don't think there's any science behind the fact that healthy people wearing masks is good for them for a long period of time throughout the day, especially the cloth mask. It's not good for you. So, and then the surgical masks and the medical masks are a whole different thing because they're made for sterile environments, and they become contaminated in a public area within 15, 20 minutes. So they don't do a whole lot of good. So anyways, I mean, I know that's debatable, argumentative, can be debated back and forth, but anyways, I'll just leave it at that. And I guess I would say from the council standpoint, I appreciate the position that everybody's in. But I also want to remind everybody that the oath that was taken at this to stand up for our constitutional rights and our California state constitution, it's very important that we have the freedom to choose and do these types of things. And it's a precarious position. I get that. So anyways, that's all from me.
And Mayor, I forgot going forward. I just want to remind everybody, we didn't say anything, so I didn't want to interrupt the speaker. But we do have a 3-minute timeline on comments. So just going forward, I'll just let you know when that timeline's up. I'm sorry, 5-minute timeline.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I don't see any other hands up, Mayor, but again, let me ask. Oh, I see one person. He's got the different thing, but we'll unmute him because it's a clap. So instead of a mute, but I'm going to unmute him. And it's going to be under the name Marilyn Graham.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Alan Silver. And I just have a comment is, the Governor Newsom and folks are doing a great job. He's got all these guidelines, but they may be in place, but who's actually going to enforce them? I mean, there are some stores that absolutely refuse to wear masks or anything else. Now, this could impact the entire city or county if the state steps in and says you're not doing what the governor requests. So, I mean, are the police or sheriffs going to actually be able to go in, or a business owner say, listen, you need to get out of my store, put a mask on, and if they refuse, can they then say, well, here's your choice. Either put a mask on, or can I call the sheriff or the police and have you removed because you're trespassing? Is there anybody going to actually do something? I mean, it's already proven masks and everything are appropriate. So I'm just wondering, is there any clout? I mean, you see a lot of words, but is anything actually going to be accomplished?
So just for the record, we'll answer comments once everybody's had their chance to comment.
Any other public comment?
So again, press *9 or use the raise your hand feature, or if you have your screen on, wave your hand and I'll look through real quick and see if there's anybody else who wants to talk. Mayor, I don't see anybody. So, oh, sorry, Lori's waving her hand. So.
Hi guys. So I just wanted to say that it would be great if there's a lot of confusion and a lot of wishy-washiness about it, because some people think that a mandate isn't a rule and a rule isn't a law. And so I don't have to do it because, it would be great if somehow, our city council could put out a statement saying, this is what we need to do, so that everybody feels like they're following the proper guidance, that there's more guidance than the wishy-washiness that's out there. And I know I'm dealing with it from a business level. We have half the people in our business want to do one thing and half want to do the other thing. So we want to do the right thing, and we would love to have some city council guidance, or even from the county level. That would be helpful. Thank you.
So again, if you'd like to speak, please press *9 or use the raise your hand function.
Is there any more public comment?
Mayor, I don't see anybody else's hands. Let me scroll through the pictures real quick. Nobody waving their hand frantically either. So I think we're ready to close public comment, and I have a couple comments I can make if you want.
Excellent. I'll bring it back to the council, and I believe Councilmember Such has a question.
I just want to, Doug, I was just going to ask you this question. And at a meeting that I attended last week, county council said that a mandate is a law. A mandate from the governor is enforceable as a law. It's not a guideline, it's a law. But if you could correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and I understand where the confusion comes from, because some of this stuff has come out so quickly and candidly sloppy that it's been really difficult to follow. But let me be very clear. These guidelines are written with the power that the governor has behind it under the executive order, and given to him by the granted to him by the state legislature. The requirements are mandatory. They have the same effect of any other law, like a speeding limit or something else. And the way that our Constitution at the state level is set up, and our laws, those are laws. Now, our law enforcement has discretion. They do have the ability to enforce it if they wanted to, but they have discretion, and we have relied heavily, using the governor's own words, on education. And I think that we are always going to continue to lead with education unless we don't have a choice. But I can tell you, I've represented other jurisdictions where businesses have called on people who haven't worn masks and had them removed for trespassing and other things. And let me be very clear, a private business has an absolute right to prohibit people who don't want to wear a mask in their business. It's their business, it's their property. They have an absolute right to tell somebody not to come in to their business if they don't want them to, if they're not wearing a mask. And there's no medical exception to that person and the way that they want to operate their business, right? That's a private property right that they have. But I understand the confusion. I really do, because there's been stuff that he said in his news conferences that are recommendations that turn out only to be recommendations. And then he'll say something in the press conference. It's like, okay, is it a law? Is it not a law? I will say that the stuff we're talking about right now has the power and effect of law. It is required at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Doug. The first gentleman mentioned about the 60-day sunset on the original order. Can you speak to that? Has it been renewed, or has it been the term sub whatever to another order?
Yeah, they have the ability to continue that. The legislature has done that. As you know, that there's actually a legislator who tested positive today, and it looks like they're going to shut down the legislature and make some other precautions. When they went out over break, they even granted the governor the most expansive, incredibly expansive rights to respond during the coronavirus that are usually relegated to the legislature. So I think it's safe to say that the governor has extremely broad powers, and an emergency can go on and continue for some period of time. This may be the longest one we've ever had. I mean, if you think about like hurricanes and Hurricane Katrina, those have expanded for, after effects for, 6 months. So yeah, I expect that I expect that our state of emergency, both at the city level and at the state level, will last through the end of the year. For the public, one of the reasons we keep the state of emergency is it qualifies us for funding. If we don't have a state of emergency, then we don't qualify for certain funding. So there's additional financial reasons that we have our own continuing state of emergency as well.
So, Doug, am I correct in hearing that the governor's state of emergency powers continue for as long until the legislature takes it away from him?
Until it's lifted, it can be lifted by the legislature independent of him, but it's the most expansive powers that's been granted a governor in our state's history.
Thank you.
Any other council member comment?
I just want to add that the city has passed an ordinance that also could help enforce the masking law. That it covers that. Now, we haven't used it. I've received a lot of emails requesting that we start enforcing that, but that doesn't address businesses, people who come into businesses and refuse to comply. But businesses who aren't willing to enforce the mask rule could be fined by the city.
Mary Rose, did you have anything?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I just would like to I know Lori had made a question about issuing a type of guidance from the city council. I just would like to reiterate the fact that the public health officer is the public health officer for the city, and they have issued many guidance on face mask covering. The most recent was issued on June 25th, which states that the face mask covering was a legal mandate and that all residents were required to follow that legal mandate. So again, the public health officer for the county is the public health officer for the city. So we follow her guidance. And then also as far as enforcement, and I don't know if the chief would like to speak in regards to the chief of police, but we have been receiving requests from businesses in regards to enforcement of face mask covering for patrons that patronize businesses. So our police force has been dealing with businesses in ensuring that customers that are in businesses are wearing face masks. So we are dealing with those enforcement mechanisms. And again, yes, council member, such is correct. We do have our ordinance does allow for administrative penalties for those businesses that do not comply with the public health officer and the governor's orders.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So can I just repeat something, Mayor, real quick? I want to make sure everybody understands. These are largely enforcement of the state or the public health officer's orders. The city council as a whole did not create the orders. We did create an administrative fine schedule for people who don't follow those orders, but those are only enforcement of rules that are made that the city is legally required to enforce. So I just want to make that clear for everybody.
Thank you. Okay, so item number I, new business. Number 1 is approve the CAL FIRE Tuolumne Calaveras Unit 2020-21 local government assistance by hire agreement and authorize the mayor and fire chief to sign the agreement. Approve resolution 76-2020-C adopting the 2020-21 local government assistance by hire agreement. Mary Rose.
So I'm going to let the fire chief handle this item, but this is just to reiterate, this is a 2-action item, asking you to approve the agreement and then asking you to approve the resolution. So Fire Chief New, if you could. Doug, you might have to unmute Fire Chief Amy New.
I asked her to unmute, yeah.
Amy.
How about now?
Yep, there you
Yes,
go.
we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So we currently do have the assistant by hire agreement in place. It's referred to as the ABH agreement. This is actually to readopt it because there has been a change in the California Fire Assistance Agreement to the amounts of money that can be reimbursed back to the city. So CAL FIRE, Tuolumne County Calaveras Unit has allowed the local agencies to redo the agreement and update those funding sources so that we can recoup the 100% of the actual costs allowed by the CFAA agreement. So nothing has changed in the actual agreement that we signed last year in 2019, except for the page that is requesting reimbursement back to the assistance by hire in the local Tuolumne Calaveras Ranger Unit. Those amounts have gone up. So in order for the city to recoup back 100% of our reimbursement when utilized under the ABH agreement, this last page and adopting the agreement again will allow us to get 100% of that reimbursement back. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Do any members of council have any questions?
I had a correction, but I can't. That's why I should flag.
I think we're having trouble hearing whoever's speaking.
Sorry, it's Colette. There just was a typo that I wanted to correct. There was a typo I wanted to correct, but I haven't.
Council member, if it's just a typo, then you can just
Do that
inform.
later.
Yeah, you can do that later because that's non-substantive. So if you can just let the city administrator know, then we could do that.
I have another question. On the last two pages, it's and maybe you were just saying this, Chief New, but aren't they the identical same page? Page one, the signature, the CAL FIRE signature looks different, but everything else is identical. Is that what you were just saying, that it's the same contract as last year?
Yes, it is the same contract. That the name will change this year because we do have a new unit chief. So that is the reason for signing the new contract agreement, and then the reimbursement is changing as well. So they're allowing us to re-sign that as well.
Does this reflect a change in reimbursement? I didn't see that.
It looked identical.
They look like the exact
So,
same page.
Yeah, so the updated CFAA agreement page that we sign every year with the state of California for deployments, they have increased the reimbursements. That's changed. So that is now going to be part of the assistance by hire with the local Tuolumne Calaveras Ranger Unit, those amounts.
But the copies we have do not reflect that change. Is that correct?
The copies you have should be the updated amounts per the CFAA, dated 2020.
I don't see that.
Both pages, we don't have an old contract and a new one, but rather two new contracts.
Yes.
Yeah, the contract, nothing changed in the contract except for the reimbursement page.
Okay.
And that should be the updated rates to reflect 2020.
So that reimbursement rate, the old rates are not reflected on that page.
So why do we have two copies?
I'm sure from a copying perspective, it's because we have to sign two copies and they just simply copied both.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the two original, those are two originals, one for the city to keep and one to go back to Tuolumne Calaveras Ranger Unit. They're both identical, correct?
Got it.
Yeah.
I just was confused. Okay.
I just had a question on the reimbursement. It's stupid, I know, but for the fire engines, the type 1 and type 3, you have a base of $154, and then depending on the personnel, those are additional reimbursements?
Yes, so the equipment gets reimbursed at an hourly rate, and then the personnel also get reimbursed because when we're sending out an engine for assistance, we have to backfill with overtime. So they get charged at time and a half to cover the backfill that we have to fill to cover the city when the engine is out of the area.
And so the SUVs and the pickup, those are just equipment?
Correct. Yes, so that gets reimbursed and then the personnel gets reimbursed separately.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay, is there any public comment? Doug?
Oh, sorry, forgot to say that my spiel.
Thank
If
you,
you'd
Amy.
like to make a comment, please press *9 or use the raise your hand function on your device. Again, that can be located under the participant button. Mayor, I do not see any hands raised or folks frantically waving their hands saying that they would like to speak. So,
Oh, wow. Okay, well, then we'll bring it back to the council.
I'm ready to make a motion. Can I make, it's two items. Can I make up to the two item in one motion? Doug?
yes, you can,
Okay.
as long as nobody is going to vote differently on one versus the other.
I don't foresee that.
Yeah.
So I move to approve the CAL FIRE Tuolumne Calaveras Unit 2020-2021 local government assistance by hire agreement and authorize the mayor and the fire chief to sign the said agreement. And also move to approve the resolution 0607-2020-C adopting the 2020-2021 local government assistance by hire agreement.
Second.
Okay, Mary Rose, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer,
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa,
Aye.
Councilmember Such,
Aye.
Councilmember Sagerstrom.
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0 with a roll call vote. New business number 2, consideration to approve beyond a 2-week trial period, a City of Sonora temporary outdoor permit to Type 1 Enterprise, DBA Sonora Brewing Company for closure of Bradford Avenue to use of an outdoor restaurant seating due to COVID-19 physical distancing guidelines. Authorize a city administrator to execute the permit.
So this item is once again being brought before the city council. On June 15th, the city council authorized 2-week trial period to allow for Sonora Brewing Company for weekend closure beginning on the evening of Friday and then through the hours of 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday, and then 11 a.m. through 9 p.m. on Sunday for operation of the outdoor space at Bradford Avenue. It has been 2 weeks, and so this item is being brought before the council for consideration of whether or not they would allow for the closure of Bradford Avenue during the duration of our COVID-19 pandemic. If you recall, our ordinance 868 allowed for businesses to submit an application for either use of sidewalk space or to apply for closure of a side street to allow for use of those outdoor seating for expansion of their businesses due to the COVID restrictions. So this item again is before you in regards to seeking a permit beyond that 2-week initial trial period. If you look at the agenda report that I submitted to the council, I did state that the City Hall has received many comments since the approval of this 2-week trial period, some in favor of the closure. We have received many comments expressing concern about the closure of the street in regards to the safety of the closure of that street. And then I've also included the recent Tuolumne County Public Health Compliance letter that was issued to the Sonora Brewing Company that Public Health has been issuing to businesses that are not complying with public health guidance and governor guidance. So I am available for any additional questions. I believe Mr. Silva, Thomas Silva, is on the line as well.
Excellent. Councilmember Garaventa.
So I have a question. One of the things we talked about at the last meeting was implementing a 2-week time period so that there could be more discussion about the closing of Green Street and using that as a possibility. Has there been any further happenings on that front?
I know we have discussed it. I have not had any personal conversations with the owner of Bradford B&B. I know Councilmember Such has. But yes, we have looked at it from a staff perspective. We still think that is the best option for allowing for the outdoor space usage for Mr. Silva. It allows for him to utilize the closure or outdoor seating from a closure of a street perspective, but allowing for more of a safety mechanism, as we know that Bradford Avenue is used for our safety vehicles.
Councilmember Such.
I did speak to Patrick, the owner of the Bradford Inn, and I'm sorry, Patrick, that's not the correct name of your business. I'm sorry about that. But, and he was willing. I mean, he wasn't objecting to it. He wasn't thrilled, however, but he wasn't objecting because he felt like it was for the greater good. I drove to Green Street. It couldn't be from Bradford to, what's the other street?
It's
along- Jackson. Because that would completely block access to his business.
Right.
And his,
There has to be some access, yeah. to his
So
business.
it could only go from Bradford to the driveway where his customers drive into park and stuff like that. But he was, I mean, I haven't talked to him, since the last, I think it was the day or after our last meeting, but in hope maybe he's signed on tonight. But he was willing to do that. His concerns were that it not be unattractive. And so, perhaps he could have planters that were not so heavy. They couldn't be moved out of the way and with flowers. And his other concern was noise, that it not disrupt
His guests.
But I haven't followed up with him, but then he was willing for the greater good to agree to that. Just for Fridays, at the same hours as Bradford.
And if the council is directing staff to work with his business in order for closure of Green Street, that is definitely something we can do. Again, right now we're just looking at whether or not we want to grant the Bradford Avenue closure.
Okay.
Any other council members? Yes.
I have heard from several residents that, they passed Bradford during the closure and the seating wasn't optimized. So I would be interested to hear from Mr. Silva if he thought that the closure was an added value to his business and he could at least demonstrate that he gained sales from it. Mr. Silva.
Excellent. Any other council comment or questions?
For asking staff questions, my first question really is to Chief New about how much, now that we've actually had a trial period, how much it has affected any responses and her candid feeling on going forward with it.
We should also ask the police chief too, by the way.
Well, yeah, but
Go ahead.
Doug, if you could unmute Chief New in regards to Mayor Pro Tem Plummer's question.
Yep. And I'm unmute Chief Vanderwell as well.
Amy, did you hear the question by Mayor?
Yeah, could you repeat that? Sorry, go ahead.
yes, and I will cut it down to about 1/10 the size of the former question, and that was, what is your candid assessment of how that has worked and how it affects the public safety from your perspective, and then of course Chief Vanderwheels.
So, I mean, obviously Bradford Street is very accessible for emergency vehicles, and we do rely on that to get across. During the 2-week trial period, there were calls on the west side of Washington Street that we needed to go to. I don't think it slowed the response down significantly just in that 2-week time period, but there is the other options to look at possibly for closure that would allow Bradford Street to be opened especially during fire season. I have gotten a lot of public comment back in regards to evacuation routes and access for people to utilize during a wildfire emergency. So I do take those concerns very seriously as well, I'm sure, as the police chief does. So we didn't see any significant delays in our emergency response during that 2 weeks. So if that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes, it does.
And from the police department, we didn't see any issues as far as having to divert or reroute any emergency equipment. Again, the police department's equipment is a lot smaller, so we can get around pretty good. You know, the concerns for me was just as a major east-west should something happen. You know, if we go on to the long term, you know, it could increase traffic, you know, downtown at the Stockton Road, Washington intersection. Yeah, I would fully support just about any other street in the city to that for that purpose. You know, I think it's a good opportunity for Mr. Silva and his business. I like that business. You know, but this is my professional opinion. So hopefully, Thomas, I'm still welcome in your establishment, but you know, my opinion is based on you know, my professional opinion based on safety. So that's kind of where I stand. But no, we did not. The short answer is we did not incur any significant delays in the past couple of weeks.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Any other council questions before I turn it to public comment?
We can have questions afterwards.
Yes. Okay, I'd like to open it up to public comment.
Mayor, would you like to start with Mr. Silva? We usually start with him since he's here.
Absolutely.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Hey guys, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hey, congratulations, Ms. Segerstrom, for your for being elected or appointed here on the city council. That's awesome. Good family name. And then also to you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Plummer. So let's start with Ann Segerstrom, Councilor Segerstrom's question about added value. I did the first weekend, it added a lot of value. The Father's Day weekend, I'd say it probably added about $3,500 to our overall sales. And so is that a lot in a 3-day gig? You know, yes, for how much we've lost, yes, it really did add a lot to help us out. And that was Father's Day weekend. And again, I didn't see too much of a traffic impact. And then on the following weekend, it was so hot out there on Saturday that, I mean, it was miserably hot. So, and you guys probably all remember that weekend. It was probably the hottest day of the summer so far. That Sunday, we had a much better turnout for outside dining. But that Saturday during the day, yeah, you're absolutely correct. There was not a whole lot of people wanting to sit outside. So that's why I think we didn't see a whole lot of people out there that Saturday. But towards about like 5 o'clock, 5:30 that evening, it was actually really sought after. That's where a lot of our customers wanted to sit. So yeah, it went well for us. It worked out great. We were able to, you know, safely accommodate with social distancing. It really just helped out without having a clog up or people waiting, or, you know, you can sit out here and start and order your appetizers and your food. And then when the table's available, you know, maybe you eat your appetizers out here, go inside if you want to sit out. But it was kind of a mix of how many people wanted to sit inside or outside. Definitely helped. The temporary barrier, I'm not sure if Mary Rose, I ended up texting her to see if she could send a picture, but we parked the Chevelle out there on Washington Street, and I figured, you know, in both chiefs' opinions, it's, you know, I was a tree climber for a lot of years, and it's always worst case scenario. You know, every move you make it's worst case scenario. So that's their job, you know, and we can't be taken back by the fact that they would rather not have that road closed. That is they're thinking worst case scenario, high speed chase, wildfire. So very serious stuff that I respect. And again, we did this as a temporary trial. I didn't see any real crazy effects, but I wasn't on the scanner, so I don't really know what I missed as far as that goes. We did have one concern from St. Patrick's Church, was the only concern that I had heard of. I have not heard any negative complaints about this road closure, but I did address that. I called her immediately as soon as I found out, and what we did is on Sunday we bumped it back till 12 o'clock before we closed it, before we shut the street down. So the longtime attending St. Patrick's churchgoers could get to mass without getting stressed out and having to go around. And because when I go to church, I'm usually that guy who's running late, and so I just figured that's super easily doable to help them out. We did it. I spoke with her again regarding that. She said it worked perfectly. Thank you. And I said, thank you for your understanding. And so I do want to address the public health, like the mask thing. I did receive a letter, as did many businesses downtown Sonora, regarding the health or the masks. And I have implemented that all of our staff wear masks, okay? And that has been going on now since the day before our first road closure. So that would have been on the 19th. So right around then, is when we started implementing wearing a mask. And my opinion on whether I agree with it or not doesn't matter. This is above me. But we have implemented to wear masks. So it was refreshing to actually receive our first real letter from the county or the city regarding something to the coronavirus, because it's all just been, very, well, like Doug said, candidly sloppy guidelines, put out. It's been pretty rough for us to know, well, what's real, what is not real, like what is really, what's going on. So at any rate, though, I'm not here to disagree with that. We are doing that. We are adhering to that. And then, as far as that, what is it, the N3320, this is why outdoor seating is needed. I really feel like this is our best way to stay open, is if we have outdoor seating. I put the temporary, if you guys saw it, I put the Chevelle out front, out on the Washington side of Bradford, to where if somebody did come running through, maybe it would help. I'm sure it would. That's old school steel, but we could do that on both sides. And that, the staff knows where the key is to that Chevelle. It's right in the register, and any one of them with a driver's license, I'll let them pull it out of the way. Even though I wouldn't like that. I don't like anybody driving that car, but I would if it's an emergency, we get a call immediately. They call down to the brewery, we will move that car and have those tables out. I'd say it'd take us about 2 minutes. It took us 8 minutes to set up our very first time. So as far as temporary barrier, I think we've got that. What am I missing?
So, do any of the council members have any questions for Mr. Silva at this time with this? He had brought up the car and that sort of thing. Councilmember Sutch?
I have a couple questions, Mr. Silva. Did the Catholic Church have any concerns about Mass on Friday or Saturday?
They did not. No, not the least. The biggest concern was, I believe their last Mass starts around, I think it was 11 or 11:30, because they've added, I believe, two more Masses. And
11:30 when? On Saturday?
No, on Sunday.
Right, I'm asking about Friday and Saturday.
No, there was zero. No, nothing was brought up about Friday or Saturday. No, it was only regarding Sunday.
It was to me. I heard, they complained to me about that.
Okay, well, if I'm not mistaken, I did speak with her. She said that she was going to try and get on this meeting, so hopefully she's on here, and they can address that.
Your car that was parked perpendicular on Bradford Street, did you have permission to do that?
I didn't need it. That was my sector closed off for the weekend, and to my discretion for safety, and I felt like it was safe.
Okay. That's it for now. I have more later.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, it's just regarding the Green Street closure. And again, I'm open to everything, but what I have seen is on Green Street, if we do what we were talking about with, I think Colette brought it up, but just in front of, to where they still have access to the driveway, I think that's gonna really spark a lot of confusion to the people coming down on Green Street that aren't redirected on Jackson. If I'm saying that correctly, yeah, I should be. If it's not up there with the road closure, because then they're going to come in and have to try and do a U-turn in this tight area, and they're seating here. So that'd be one thing that I thought about as that came up, because they still need access to their bed and breakfast there. So I wanted to just throw that out there.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess we'll go to public comment. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
I received, okay, my wife Chantal is a regular parishioner at St. Patrick's, and so the church secretary sent me a letter asking about that and if something couldn't be done, which I then forwarded to Mr. Silva. And they came to an agreement for shifting it 1 hour. In that letter, it was only for Sunday that she was concerned. And so Mr. Silva, at least on that item, just dealt with what was the official concern of the church. I don't know anything about and didn't receive any other information about Friday and Saturday.
I had four phone calls, but about Friday and Saturday, but I don't know what time Mass is. But
Okay, it was,
Okay. I'm trying my best here, and the mask is confusing me a little bit. But
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just to clarify for
yes,
a comment that or a question that Council Member Such stated, Mr. Silva did come to the city to ask permission to park the car, and yes, he did discuss it with us, and we thought it was a good situation for him to have that additional safety barrier, but it was something also that could be easily moved in case we needed to be able to have access to that street. So yes, he did speak with us in regards to that.
Great. Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment?
So Mayor, if we could, so just as a reminder, if you'd like to speak, please use the raise your hand function, which can be found under participants on your device. Or if you're using a regular phone, you can press *9. At this time, Mayor, we have 3 hands that are raised, 4 now. But the first hand that was raised, and I'll try to go as much as I can in order, was Candy's iPad. So I'm going to unmute them and go ahead, Candy's iPad.
Oh, we got it there? Okay. Yeah. Hello, guys. How you doing? Hey, I'm Scott Berry. We own the floral shop across from Tom's restaurant, and I'm in support of him closing down the street. I think he's done it 2 times, maybe 3. And in my opinion, it did not impede traffic. The social distancing was used. The crew that waited on the people used their masks, and I think it helped generate extra foot traffic later in the day, like obviously after 5 or 6 p.m. to help local businesses with increased sales. And I think that really helped because of COVID-19. Everyone's been shut down. Some people have just reopened. Now there's talk of them, closing back up. And we used to own the McDonald's in the Junction for about 15, 16 years. And I know restaurants are really, it's a tough industry right now because of everybody with the back and forth. But I just wanted to say that I know Tom and I'm supporting him. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So Mayor, up next would be somebody under the name of Sandra Betty.
Unfortunately, I can't see if they're unmuted, but
They are unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Hi, I'm Sandra Betty. I'm the music director and on the staff at St. Patrick's Catholic Church. I'm the one that's been speaking with Councilmember Plummer and Tom. And I just wanted to say that, well, first of all, I can clarify that one question on Saturdays. Pre-COVID-19, we did have a Saturday Mass at 5 p.m. We are no longer having that Mass, that particular Mass. If it was to be reinstated in the future, I think we can deal with that because who knows if and when that will ever be reinstated at this point. So I did talk with Tom. We had a great discussion. We compromised at a slightly later opening time on Sunday. I was concerned about our parishioners getting into Mass. Bradford Street is the street they turn on because Jackson is one way. St. Patrick's is about 2 blocks behind Washington Street on Jackson Street. So we had a good discussion. We came to a compromise. It was all very refreshing in these days of divisiveness and conflict. That spirit of cooperation was very much appreciated, and we both agreed we could be good neighbors. And so far, there have been no problems. The only people it's impacting are our final parishioners going home after the 11 o'clock Mass on Sunday, and nobody seems to be having any problems going around and getting back onto Washington.
okay.
That's all I wanted to say.
Do any council members have any questions?
Just thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Mayor, and I apologize if this is not exactly in order because things jump around a little bit on Zoom. But the next person with the name of David.
Go ahead, David.
Needs to unmute.
Just unmute, yeah.
Excellent. We're listening.
He's on mute.
Yes. There he is. Nope. You're still muted, David.
Mute.
There you go.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
How can I help?
Siri can hear you too.
Can the meeting hear me? Can I get some input back and forth?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
This is a new one.
He can't hear us.
I know.
Hello, I've tried to unmute this screen several times. I hope you can hear me. I can't get any affirmation. I got a head nodding. Thank you. Thank you very kindly. I can see somebody hears me now. Boy, howdy. This is really different than being in Sacramento at the city council meetings there. But that was in the before time. I'm totally in support of the closure. I think it's great that Mr. Silva, having worked with the church and come up to a time frame on Sunday that works great for both of them. It's one of those things that we need to have every opportunity for every business there is in our community to stay strong through this very difficult time. And I would like to see this continue as permanent as possible until such time as it's no longer needed. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, the next caller is ends in 139.
We are listening.
Caller with the last three of 139.
Hello?
Hello?
Yep, you're there.
Hello?
Mayor, I'm gonna,
Let's go to the next one, then we can come back, I'm sure.
so the next one on the list would be with the name of Kendra.
Go ahead, Kendra, we're listening.
Kendra, you're unmuted.
Huh.
Is this our technology?
Nope, they just muted themselves again. Kendra, you're unmuted right now, Kendra.
So if everyone that is raising a hand can just be prepared to speak, I know we could probably move things along a little quicker.
Mayor, we'll go
That's
to
all.
Thad next.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yay.
I have some concerns about the closure of Bradford. I live on the east side of Bradford, over off of Lyons. When I go into the west side of Bradford, like if I want to head to the fairgrounds, with Bradford closed, it's a very circuitous route. I either have to go up to Yaney or down to the Stockton Road. And I'm concerned that if emergency vehicles, fire, ambulance, police, need to go east and west, that's one of our major cross streets. The other item is that one business is benefiting, but does that benefit outweigh the safety concerns that this closure might create? Then the other, another item is, I think if Bradford is allowed to be closed, I think that we need some specific closure devices, not just a couple of traffic cones or somebody parking a vehicle out there. I think that closure needs to be specified, and then who's going to be responsible for doing that closure? If there's going to be stronger barriers like at Linoberg, who's going to move those barriers in and out each time that the street gets closed? Or is just parking a car across the street going to be sufficient? And in the request for this closure, I think that there needs to be a sunset so that it can be revisited at some time sometime in the future, not just open-ended like until the pandemic is over. I think that it needs to be something a little bit more specific than for the duration of the pandemic. Okay, those are my comments.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mayor, the next one is a caller identified as iPhone.
Caller identified as iPhone, we're listening. Okay.
Okay.
Not getting anything.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely not getting anything.
All right, let's move to the next one. Mayor, next person is identified as Hope.
Go ahead, Hope, we're listening.
Good evening, gentlemen. I am speaking as both a homeowner on the east side of Washington Street and a current resident on the west side of Washington Street. And I'm speaking from 21 years of circumnavigating Washington Street as both an employee and a business owner. I'm sure you all saw that the grand jury just released a report a couple days ago, and there's a huge section in it saying it's not if, it's when. And they say in there, and I'm going to quote, "A mass evacuation will always be difficult on neighborhood roads that are 2 lanes, winding and easily blocked by one fallen tree, power poles, or abandoned vehicles across the road. In addition, on holiday weekends or during large-scale events, highways and roads can quickly become dangerously congested. Bradford is a critical evacuation route for the entire Leonard's Addition, Myers Hill, and Lyons Road corridor. Bradford's now the only direct access to Stockton Road other than Washington Street. Let's see. I also see this as another step in the heading towards the precedence that was set over on Linerberg. And the parking of the car is a perfect example. I understand that the city was on record saying the heavy cement pots on Linerberg are necessary to protect public safety. I've heard that standard doesn't apply here because it's only 3 days per week. I don't think the courts would agree with you. I know that restrictions have been loosened during the COVID crisis, but I doubt protection for public safety is one of them. Fire and emergencies don't take the weekends off, and we don't have 15 minutes to spare to clear up that road if there's a huge instant fire like we've seen in other places. Another concern is what somebody else just raised, is that there's no ending date on this. Since the application is based on COVID restrictions, does that mean that this temporary closure will remain as long as COVID does? Does that mean that they'll be putting up propane heaters out there come the fall? At what point does temporary become permanent? Please remember the precedent setting that you are doing here. I can speak directly to the difficulty in running a business during the COVID virus, but I find myself at a loss as to why the city would even contemplate this closure that has so many potentially negative outcomes and possible lawsuits. The brewery has other options, and the council is elected to serve all members of the community, not just one stakeholder. I respectfully ask the council to vote no on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, the next speaker we have is Lori.
Okay.
Okay, hi. Hi, guys. So, already kind of know my feeling about this. I think that Green Street is a better option because of the access to leave Bradford more accessible for emergencies. But I also don't like to hear people when they talk about why would you do this for one business? And the reality is that it's not just for one business, but it's for part of the vitality of downtown Sonora. If we start losing restaurants, then it's just not a fun place for people to come and visit. They don't have any place to go eat. So we need to really support all the businesses downtown, and this is an awesome way. We just have to think outside the box a little bit more in these times. I do agree with Thad about the sunset part of it. I think we definitely should look back on it in a month or so from now. I would love to see it be more aesthetically pleasing and have some better shade options because especially it's not going to get any cooler. We know second Saturdays in the summertime, it starts at 5 o'clock, but nobody comes out until 6, 7 o'clock at night. So the reality is, you know, he could probably just do evening hours and still make good money and have a safe environment and work with everybody. So that's my feeling on it. I support Thomas in his hard work, and thank you to the city council for giving him these first 2 weeks and considering the alternative or the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, next speaker goes by the name of TJ Rogers.
We're listening.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm actually for Thomas in the Sonora Brewery. I think it's great for our downtown, especially through everything our city has gone through these last few months or more. It helps downtown in a big way. And and it opens up another avenue for people to come out, sit outside, because some people don't want to go inside restaurants. They'd rather eat outside. So it's going to help his revenue, and it's going to help our other businesses in town for people to shop, because they're going to come outside, they're going to walk our sidewalks, and they're going to look at our other businesses. And just to make a note of this, or just to make a comment, I noticed it's really evident. I mean, I don't know, like barriers, someone made a comment about blocking off the road, because we had went out there the weekends they were open, and it was pretty clear that, I mean, you're not getting through, but there wasn't stuff everywhere. It would be very easy if they needed to move stuff out in a quick fashion, they could. And I'm for the Sonora Brewery, and I support them. And I think it's really good for our county right now, our city, and what we're going through. It just opens up another avenue of outdoor eating, because a lot of people, when you have that, they rather eat outside. They're more comfortable outside with the COVID and all the laws, and going there, all their people, when we went out, they had their masks. I mean, it was a very comfortable place, and we felt like it was a comfortable place to eat. And all the people that work there, I mean, I don't know all the laws, but
Oh, you're not there any longer.
I'm for it, and I think it's good for our. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, next one is Charles Singerstrom.
Go ahead, Charles. We're listening.
I'm hoping to be unmuted.
Yep.
We can hear you.
In these times, we do need to do all we can for downtown Sonora. No argument there. But we have to maintain a safety first mentality. As I mentioned last month, the fatalities associated with the Paradise Fire had to do with lack of egress, and minutes do matter there. So if we're looking at safety first, I think closing Bradford as opposed to closing Green, Bradford is a second choice to that. My proposal to put safety first and to also have opportunities for outside dining for Sonora Brewing is to try Green Street. Why not do it on a 2-week trial, as Bradford was done on a 2-week trial? Come back and see what the repercussions are for the Catholic Church, as well as the bed and breakfast, as well as the venues involved. I'd also like to say that, this whole mask issue in our country is really perplexing. The countries that have kept their fatalities in the hundreds instead of the hundreds of thousands have been religious about the implementation of masking. It's time for us to do that. And I'm sorry to say that as I walk downtown, I look and see how things are going. And during the Bradford closure, out of four employees, I would say half of one employee was using a mask. 3 indoors in the main restaurant were not. 1 outside was using a mask, but allowing it to slip, mostly off of all the way off the nose and halfway off the mouth. So if the mask's actually going to work, we need to use them right. And also, masks are like, to me, smoking. Smoking is something that damages other people. Masking is not, just for the individual's welfare, it's for others. So I don't see it as a victimless crime to smoke, and I don't see it as a victimless crime, to refuse to use a mask. So if we put safety first, I think we try Green Street with a 2-week trial, and we also, as difficult and cumbersome as it is, look to the successes around the world, which don't happen to be in our country, where masks have really made a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Doug.
Sorry, I was muted. Next speaker is Courtney Ross Tillman.
Hi, can you guys hear
Hey,
me?
Ms. Tillman, we are listening.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I am in support of Thomas and the brewery using Bradford Street. I think it's a great outlet for them to be able to support, practice social distancing. And I know a lot of the other counties in California have moved to using outside seating. And I think that this is a great way for him to practice social distancing just to maintain our safety in this pandemic. And I think it's great for our local business as well. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor, next up would be Howie Rogers.
Go ahead,
Hi, can
Mr.
you
Rogers.
guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm actually in favor of the closure of Bradford Street temporarily, mainly Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays included, at least through this COVID pandemic. I think that not only does it provide outdoor seating in downtown Sonora other than just the street from Diamondback there, but I do think that it raises acknowledgement from people that they can go out and eat outside and social distance, and they notice that other people are also doing the same thing. I think it does encourage safety. I think that if you see it, I've been there the first weekend that they had that closed down, and noticed that all the waitresses were wearing and waiters were wearing their safety masks, and many customers are wearing them. Even when their waiters or waitresses would come up and talk to them, they would put them back on, and people are becoming more and more aware of the situation here in town. And I think that providing access to go outside and get out of the house and get some fresh air safely and go out and eat in downtown Sonora, especially at the brewery, which has become a very epitomal part of our downtown culture in the last year, especially. Our first brewery here in downtown Sonora, in many of our lifetimes, at least that I know of. And it would be really a shame to try and withhold them, especially since their indoor seating is so minimal and it is a small building. I think that as far as safety measures goes, this is not a permanent closure of the street as far as we can see for now. And I know a lot of people are bringing up the sunset clause and things like that. That all sounds like a great idea to me for now. I think that a car can be easily moved. If he wants to park a car on the street to block, it just turns a key and rolls right out of the way to a parking space. I think that you can even aim it towards the correct way to parallel park down the street if it has to. Safety cones, road closed, blockaging signs, these are easy things to move as opposed to giant concrete flower pots and umbrellas down the road at the Diamondback per se, which is another street that a lot of people did use, and we have permanently closed. So I think the temporary close and only 2 to 3 days a week closure of this street is a very doable and very good way, not only for this business and people around him to support each other and take part in it, but it's also a good way for people to realize that, hey, this isn't the end of all humanity. We are allowed to go out. We can be safe. We can see other people wearing their masks. We can demonstrate social distancing and safe measuring and go out and eat. And I think that's about all I have to say. I am pro Thomas getting that street closed down, at least for now, until we get this figured out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I was told that Amy Banks was raising her hand, so I'm going to ask her to unmute.
Oh, did
Go
I do
ahead,
it?
Amy, we're listening.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm calling in support of Sonora Brewery. I think it's a great idea. I think when people come downtown and they see other people out having a nice day, sitting outside, it encourages other people to go too. And it encourages everybody to shop in the stores all around downtown. I think putting up stronger barriers on the road is going to make it harder to move vehicles quickly if we need to in an emergency. So it's not like it's a permanent fixture like Lineoberg is. So I don't know, someone was mentioning that earlier about putting something more permanent. I just think it's a great thing for these times we're having right now and trying to just make everything work. It's very difficult. So I think it would be great to keep the brewery open and keep the outside seating and keep our little community going strong. That's what we're all trying to do here. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mayor. Why don't we go back through one last time some of the ones that still have their hands raised that didn't respond. So first off, someone with the name of Kendra.
Go ahead, Kendra. We're listening. Kendra, we are listening. Okay, Doug.
They keep muting and unmuting themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and lower their hand. And then the last one we have is somebody with the phone number ending in 139.
Go ahead, we're listening.
If the last 3 digits of your phone number is 139, you're on with the city council.
Huh.
They did unmute themselves, but I'm going to go ahead and lower their hand, Mayor.
And Doug, I see Chief Vanderwill also raising his hand.
Yep.
The chief.
Chief should be unmuted now.
Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, so I just wanted to make a comment about the barriers. They came up a few times. The vehicle that was parked there, I believe the Chevelle, I think that was a great idea. We're talking about a 4,000 pound barrier. So what more can you ask for that? And it can be moved expediently. So whichever way the council goes or chooses to decide on this, whether it's Green Street, Bradford, or nothing at all, at least I would like to acknowledge that innovative idea.
Thank you. A Chevelle is a big car.
Looked good too.
Okay, Doug, do we have anyone else?
I don't see anybody else, Mayor. If anybody else would like to speak, please press *9, raise your hand, and I will go one more time real quickly through the, with that, we only allow comments one time per item. I do see one more from John Van Herman, so I'm gonna unmute him, Mayor.
Thank you. John, we are listening.
Oh, Joe, sorry. Joe's on.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm saying I'd listened to all these things these people said, and the big thing I was struck by is the world is a different place now than it was just a few months ago. And I think it's incumbent upon everybody, businesses, individuals, government agencies, to figure out a responsible way to adapt. And these people of these businesses that are out there, just ignoring the laws that have been put in place for our health, I think they're a much bigger threat to us than closing down a street so a business can maybe stay open. Likewise, the people that want to shut everything down are killing the economy. I think guys like Thomas are trying to find that place where you can keep the economy going and yet you can still be safe. And I think we should commend guys like him. And there's a million reasons to say no to any idea, but give the guy a chance. I mean, if he's social distancing, he's got his people wearing masks, he's running a business outside. I mean, I'm not going in a business right now. I got one of those guys with all the underlying health conditions, but I would love to go sit outside in the breeze and pour money back into the economy while I'm pouring Thomas's beer down my throat. And also, Thomas, I can drive a 64 Malibu. So I support Thomas's closing of the street.
Thank you.
And Mayor, with that, I do not see any other hands raised.
Excellent.
Oh, wait, I see one other person. No, Amy, we already Ms. Banks, we already had you speak, so we're not taking second rounds. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna unmute because I'm not quite sure what she's.
No, I don't want to be on a second round. I'm just trying to get out.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, sorry about that.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, I'll bring it back to the council.
And Mr. Mayor, if I will, I just want to remind the council that the item before you is for approval of closure of Bradford.
Yes.
We have not received an application for closure of Green Street.
Yep.
So if the council wants to direct staff to work with that, Mr. Silva, to look at that, you can. But right now, the item before you is only for approving the closure of Bradford.
Thank you. Okay, so who would like to go first? Mayor Pro Tem.
Any decision we take here, of course, will be fraught with a certain level of uncertainty and leave somebody unhappy. I pushed for it very strongly before, and in lieu of Green Street, even though there are greater difficulties, and that's principally because I see it as just like the Lineberg example, helping all of Sonora. Thomas will still be benefited if he ends up getting shunted back to Green Street, and it does expand. It might even give him more expansion, but it doesn't help really any of the other businesses at all. And one of the things that I think needed to be addressed is the more attractive barriers. If it is something more than 2 weeks, then the the signs that he had available, he will have a financial incentive to make it nicer. He has done a very nice job with everything else in his bar. And I, at this juncture, until something proves otherwise, have confidence that he will do a nice job when he has, if and when he has an incentive to make more attractive or to get more attractive barriers. We just use the Caltrans type barriers and they're not pretty. The Chevelle was nice and I thought that was a great touch. And should the council not want to continue this, and I suspect that might be something of the feeling, then I think that we would be doing the city a service by allowing him to do this until a Green Street solution was put in effect and brought before us, because it's very easy for things to get drawn out. But my perspective has been on this whole issue. We have asked all of our vendors, all of our businesses to make huge, and a lot of them ruinous, sacrifices for the benefit of the community. And except for the public safety side of it, and each one of us will weigh that differently, I think that it is not at all unreasonable to ask the community to make minor changes in driving around, and for the period of a couple of months. Now, addressing the sunset, we could put a hard sunset in, but hell, I'd sure like it if the governor would give us a hard sunset for all this other stuff. And he's not going to have outside seating in the rain regardless. So once we get into the fall, it's not going to be an issue. We could put a firm date on it and I'd be comfortable doing that. But like I said, I suspect that we're going to end up not going with this anyway, and that it will end up being the Green Street. So it might be a moot issue. That's it.
Anyone else?
I'll go. For me, there are two huge issues. Well, there are three issues. First and foremost, it's safety, and it's this council's responsibility to protect the safety of our citizens. blocking that street is not protecting the safety of our citizens. It's a huge evacuation route for the Lion Street Basin, our corridor. The second issue for me is that I actually, during this 2-week period, saw servers who were not masked. So they were not in compliance, even though Thomas was asking for something so great from the city and a sacrifice for all the citizens of the city. Before I think there should be a sunset. I think we should address, if we do move forward with Bradford Street, or if we move forward with any street, it should be addressed it should be an agenda item monthly on the council to be renewed. It shouldn't be I would never approve a 2-month approval. COVID is not it's not going to be here for just a couple more months. COVID is here. It's here for a while. And I think that's a great sacrifice for the city. I also would like to see a copy of Thomas's insurance that shows that he is insured for increased seating and seating on the road, to make sure that we're covered for that. Because I actually, if anything is to happen on Bradford Street with this contract, the city is liable. The city is the deep pocket. The city is vulnerable here, I think. And I think I do understand the sacrifices that small businesses have made in Sonora and in the county in general. I think we need to do everything we can to find a solution to Bradford. And I would, part of our direction should be to the city to have that in place by this coming Friday. That's it.
I'm sorry, I didn't get to it. I missed the word before this Friday.
This coming, if there is a direction to the city to close Green Street, that be in place by this coming Friday.
Just missed 2 vital words.
Thank you.
I missed the last word, sorry. We have something in place I'm sorry.
That if the direction to staff is to close to explore closing Green Street, that we have that in place by this coming Friday.
Oh, okay.
It's not much time.
My understanding is that until we have another meeting, that's not an option. Is that correct? We can't just say, well, okay, we're going to skip Bradford and get a contract to close Green Street instead before another meeting. Is that correct?
And through the mayor, the ordinance that was passed, the urgency ordinance that was passed, gave the authority for execution of those permits to the city administrator. So it does not require a meeting for the council to approve. What I would ask is, if you are asking to explore a different street, that you ask staff to explore that and work with Thomas. But again, that's not the item before you, and no application has been submitted from Sonora Brewery Company for closure of Green Street.
I don't know if, Andy, did you have more?
Well, I certainly follow you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm mostly voted for the 2-week thing on the last meeting as from what I understood to be a measure to try to get a resolution on Green Street. And I was hoping that was going to be worked at it for this meeting. And also on the recommendation of our fire chief, I'm a big believer in public safety, and closing Bradford is a bit of that's interesting, bit of a problem for me, coming from a fire family. And so I would only, I was hoping that this 2-week period was going to have some resolution toward Green Street. Everybody that lives up in the area that I do, that Colette does, that Ann does, is going to go down, in my case, Jackson Street, and then down over to Bradford if they have to have an evacuation. That's the most direct and natural way to go. So it's the only major cross street in that area. I can't support any longer a closure of Bradford. And I hope that we can find some resolution toward the Green Street closing with the adjacent landowners so that we can actually still have outdoor seating for Thomas and his company. But it was hard for me to vote for it last time, and I just can't support it again. So that's where I stand.
I would support looking into Green Street, but as far as closing Bradford is concerned, I think the public safety and emergency aspects are really overwhelming. And fortunately, in the last 2 weeks, nothing happened. Maybe nothing will happen all summer. But when something does happen, the congestion and confusion downtown could be disastrous. It's just not the perfect street to close. I'm sorry, it's adjacent to his business. I know that it encourages people to come out, but I mean, I think we have to look at other options. I just can't support Bradford Street.
What did you have, or Mark, did you have anything else?
Okay, so in the interest of trying to help our local business, sorry about that. In the interest of trying to help our local business, what avenues do we have then to, at this meeting, pursue Green Street?
You can direct staff to work with Mr. Silva and the adjacent business owner to look at the possible closure of Green Street, because the urgency ordinance that was passed authorizes the city administrator to approve that, just like I've approved other closures or outdoor seating. But yeah, again, you would have to take direct action on what is being asked, but then provide direction to staff.
So we have to make a motion on whether to approve beyond the 2 week or not, the 2 week trial. And then after that, provide direction. Do we need a motion for that?
I mean, and it could die for lack of a motion, council member. I mean, I'm just reading into kind of what I'm hearing. So if there isn't majority support, it could die for lack of a motion, or somebody can make a motion and it could be supported. And then we would be looking, if there isn't something to support the continued kind of temporary allowance on Bradford, then we would be looking for, and I think probably a motion would be most appropriate, direction to the city administrator in terms of what you'd like to explore next, or like to see her explore next as an accommodation.
Okay, so I'll say my piece on it. I actually agree with not shutting down Bradford and then shutting down the part of Green Street. I would like to see the city staff to work towards that direction. I believe there's a safety aspect, but again, it's no secret. I ran restaurants in the past, and this is just my humble opinion on this part to Thomas, is that so much, because we've had a lot of heat lately, in the evenings it's cool, but Green Street is a considerably less hot sooner. So after about 4 o'clock, the sun hits and that sort of thing. So that's just my humble opinion there. I've gotten my email and my phone and my Facebook Messenger has blown up with, how dare you shut down Bradford Street? How dare, that sort of thing. Please understand, I am listening to all sides, but these are unprecedented times, and we live in an amazing country, an amazing society, an amazing little city, and we have to do what we have to do to protect public safety. We also have to protect our businesses. So I'm all for directing city staff to go forward with Green Street. I know it's not exactly what Mr. Silva wants. I love Mr. Silva's restaurant. He does a great job there. It's very clean. I can't say enough good things about it, but I really believe at this juncture that we move forward with Green Street and maybe have it come back before us, maybe the first meeting in August. I think that would be fair. That would give us a month and, see where we're at and go from there. But that's.
What did you think about the suggestion of giving Green Street a 2 week trial?
Oh, a 2 week trial. That's fine by me. I'm sorry. I didn't.
No, I thought it was a good suggestion.
Yeah. So we could have it come before us before the next
next meeting.
Yeah, the next meeting.
Well, it would definitely, I think, allow Mr. Silva to continue to, try and generate additional revenue and have additional seating. And I agree that Green Street is a lot shadier. And next weekend it's supposed to be 100 degrees both Saturday and Sunday. So, I mean, like he wouldn't really have any valid seating until after the sunset, really, or at least late afternoon.
Yes. So I mean, I'm all for that.
Would you entertain me making a motion then that we direct staff to try and?
Well, I think the first thing is we have to deal with what's on the agenda.
Yeah, we have to bring it.
So either someone makes a motion to go ahead with it and dies for lack of second, or
I love to tilt at windmills.
or
I move to approve the application to close Bradford Street for Mr. Silva's brewery, Sonora Brewery. And now that I've tilted.
Call for it. So Matt, call for a second.
Oh, sorry. Is there any second? Okay, so it dies for lack of second.
Okay.
In that case,
Thank you.
thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Procedure.
In that case, I would like to move that we direct staff to, with the most haste possible, preferably before this weekend, because time is wasting, to look into closing Green Street for the Sonora Brewery's extra seating.
I think you need to have a from where to where.
Where to where?
You don't want them to close Green Street.
Well, from this weekend for a 2-week trial, then where it would come, or to the next meeting. Last time we kind of screwed him on this weekend because we gave 2 weeks and we had 3 weeks between our, so to the next meeting. Yes, ma'am. Am I still doing it wrong?
No.
Between Bradford and the Bradford and driveway. We can't close Green Street. We can't just close Green Street.
Very right.
That's what
I was trusting our wonderful city administrator to do that. But yes, no, we don't want to close in front of the police. I do not know that, so from Bradford for the what, half a block or so?
If I could, I think a motion would be appropriate just to say to work on a Green Street solution until the next meeting. I think that gives the city administrator enough direction.
Because remember, I still have to look at insurance from him. I
Yep.
still need to work with the adjacent business owner. So I will look at
Okay.
that, but there are still implications on that Green Street closure.
So
We have a motion
I'll second.
and now a second. Okay, so any other discussion before I call for a roll call vote?
Well,
It looked like Ann was going to say
No,
something.
no,
so- Okay.
no, I'm just anticipating the roll
Okay.
call. vote.
Okay, Mary Rose, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer,
yes.
Councilmember Garaventa,
yes.
Councilmember Sutch,
Aye.
and Councilmember Segerstrom.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. Under new business, number 3, consideration to approve or provide direction to staff on a resolution by the Sonora City Council condemning racism.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I will, just to introduce this item for you, in light of recent events, we, the city of Sonora, has been part of a nationwide movement addressing systematic racism in regards to the tragic events of the death of George Floyd. Beginning on June 3rd, the city was witness to a protest in regards to addressing equal justice for Black lives. And those protests have continued pretty much every weekend since June 3rd. I was requested by council member to come forth with a resolution in regards to addressing systematic racism and condemning racism and bigotry.
And that resolution is before you as 0706-2020A. At the same time, it was also directed by an additional council member to bring forth a resolution condemning racism and discrimination, but also reaffirming the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and also addressing that our Sonora Police Department has done a profound job in ensuring rights have the rights of those are protected while also guaranteeing peaceful protests within the city of Sonora. So again, there are two resolutions in front of you, 0706-2020A and 0706-2020B. I have provided options for the council to consider in regards to this item. There are 4 specific options in addressing these resolutions. The council has the option of approving the first resolution as written. The council also has the option of approving the second resolution as written. The council has the option of rejecting both resolutions. And the fourth option is providing direction to staff to bring back a resolution at a future city council meeting with additional language or different language that the council would like me to develop for a resolution. And at this time, I will address any questions.
Councilmember Such.
I would just like to correct resolution number 0706-2020A. The title was supposed to be a resolution condemning prejudice, bigotry, and racism. And also the first whereas, that first paragraph, a word was omitted. It was supposed to say, as well as by the many tragic events and inequities that have occurred with impunity throughout our country's and county's history. And counties was dropped because I am well aware of the history of racism in our community. Certainly with African Americans, towards African Americans, but and also towards Native Americans, and also towards Latino Americans, and prejudice towards the LGBTQ community. And with that, I would also, if the council decides that neither of these resolutions are appropriate, and we received an email today from a constituent who I think's points were very well taken, and I would certainly approve working more closely with her and other people in the community. But if we direct staff to provide a new resolution, I would actually ask that I be part of that. Be part of that, and not just direct staff. That's it.
Okay. Anyone else?
To speak to this item, well, are we talking about one right now, or both of them, or the concept?
The agendized item, it encompasses both as A and B, so you would talk about them both at this time to the extent that you desire.
I will make further comments after public comment then.
Excellent. Okay, so Jim?
No, I want to hear the public.
Okay, so I guess we will move forward with public comment.
So if you would like to speak, again, use the raise your hand function on your device. It can be found under participants, or if you're using a phone, you can press *9. And once we've gone through all the people who've raised their hands, then I will look and see if there's anybody vigorously waving their hand that hasn't raised their hand otherwise. Mayor, we have 2 hands that are raised at the moment. I'm going to say this one wrong, so I'm going to apologize, but Adalbert would be the first name that would be up. And
hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. This is Barbara Dressler. I just want to say regarding the resolution against prejudice and racism, The Guardian newspaper, which is the international online equivalent newspaper of the US's New York Times, ran an article that highlighted the standoff between the bikers and what can only be called vigilantes that came downtown and stood across the street and were very aggressive during the time that the peaceful demonstration against racism and prejudice was happening on the other side of the street. So I would encourage, because I got calls regarding that, or emails regarding that from as far away as Florida. There has been an online awareness of what happened here in Sonora, so that I would encourage the Sonora City Council to pass a resolution against prejudice and racism to counteract what is already out there on the internet. In addition, committing ourselves to higher values. Every council member starts these meetings with the pledge of liberty and justice for all. I think it's very important that this resolution is passed so that we show that these are not just words, but in our community, we dedicate ourselves to these standards for all interactions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, the next hand raised is Don Warfield.
We're listening, Don.
Good afternoon, and respected council members. I'm speaking today out of concern. I hope my criticisms are not taken too harshly. I just really feel it's important that if you're representing people of color, that we're actually acknowledged as part of contributing to this statement. So concerning the resolutions against racism, I appreciate that city council members have sought to take a stand against racism, but I have several qualms with the resolutions in their current forms. The current resolutions spend most of their messaging on national issues and gratitude to law enforcement and disregard the racism people are currently experiencing while living in and contributing to our community. The first resolution represents an attempt at a very kind gesture, and the second author seems to have seen the moment as an opportunity to write a letter of appreciation to law enforcement and our judiciary for maintaining a status quo. Both resolutions center their concerns on national dynamics and icons while glossing over the fact that we have our own potent racial issues in our city and county. While I'm deeply saddened by cases like George Floyd, a commitment to nurturing a safe and anti-racist environment in our own city must be a priority. There are two major areas in which the council members, I feel, have kind of missed the mark. Number one, hearing community voices. If the council seeks to speak on our behalf as advocates against racism and discrimination, it must acknowledge those voices that they represent. I don't see any acknowledgement of the racism experienced by people of color currently living in Sonora. Many of us feel direct and indirect racism just going about our daily lives. I see no acknowledgement of the threats of harm to Black Lives Matter and Pride protesters when people said they would plant themselves on rooftops and shoot at us if they felt we got out of line. There's no mention of the threats to actually hunt Black people and put us into wood chippers. I find no reference to the concerns raised by the Willow Springs letter published in the Union Democrat that included concerns regarding prejudice against the LGBT plus community being cultivated and reinforced by national agencies like the Family Research Council, which sends ultra-conservative speakers to rural areas to preach racial and homophobic intolerance and paranoia. The authors also missed a vital opportunity to remind and educate our community that there is a history of people of color here in Gold Rush country that have contributed to and been a long part of this community. This information is easily available and includes landmarks like the Sook House. People of diverse backgrounds have had far more significant, longer contribution to our actual heritage than the flag of a treasonous movement that has lasted less than 5 years. Citizens need community forums where people of color in the LGBT plus community can safely voice their experiences and concerns. If we're going to advocate on our behalf, we must be heard and our concerns addressed. I would argue that instead of putting forth resolutions this week, the council should extend an invitation for people who have been impacted by racism and prejudice to be heard. I would encourage a commitment to work in concert with the MLK committee to expand their event to include multicultural education and community engagement. The second area that I thought really was lacking was the resolution contains no commitment to oversight and review of systematic and economic contributors to racism. The resolution reflects more praise of law enforcement in the courts than of any express willingness to bear standard witness to ensuring appropriate use of force and justice. I see no evidence that the council members are aware that Blue Lives Matter is a reactionary anti-movement meant to lash out against the mission of BLM to advocate for proper police practices and vigilance against brutality, racial profiling, and racial bias. One can review the signs held by the Blue Lives protesters and see that they're full of racialized ideas and seek to normalize the notion that only people of particular classes and races deserve to be treated respectfully without the threat of death or undue harm. We all deserve the same rights, which include being innocent until proven guilty, and that all punishment is to be decided by the courts and not by law enforcement. We need to hear that there is a commitment to encouraging diversity in law enforcement and training and proper conduct that excludes the possibility of racial profiling and undue violent escalation during arrests. I see no commitment to work with law enforcement to ensure proper safety and protection for citizens of color. Hate crimes should be appropriately escalated and reported to the appropriate federal agencies, and they are not currently. A few years ago, when my family—
30 seconds, Don.
Okay.
Oh, 30 seconds.
Anyway, I don't see a commitment to challenge the systems that criminalize poverty and in race in our community. But I have submitted my full statement for your perusal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I believe we all did receive that.
I have not received it.
Oh, yeah, Ann has not received it. Could you send it to Councilman?
We'll make sure she gets a copy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And
okay, Doug.
Yeah, Mayor, up next we have Mercedes Toon.
Thank you. I am here and I am talking as a mother, as a wife, as a professional. I work as a program specialist at the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. I am also a US citizen born in Mexico and have lived in Tuolumne County for 20 years. I have contributed to this community as a volunteer, as a board member, as an employee, and as a friend. I inhabit a continuum of privilege and oppression. I am aware of that. All of us are privileged in some areas and oppressed in others. However, probably not like you, I have experienced firsthand the many forms that racism takes in the community. The overt and the covert ways, the implicit bias, the tokenism, the gaslighting, the silence of my friends, the scapegoating, the white-splaining, the white tears, and the attacks. It is painful to live in a community that does not see itself in the mirror. A community that pretends racism does not exist. The history of this region tells us that the Miwoks, the Chinese, the Mexicans, and many other groups were here from the very beginning, and we are still here. But the stories we hear are those of the white settlers. Two cultural markers that white supremacy culture uses to determine whose stories are told: skin color and language. Those markers, among others, create labels and stereotypes and determine who belongs and who do not. The police and other institutions see Black and brown bodies as dangerous and criminals. It is time for this community to listen to the experiences of people like me, Black people, people of color and indigenous people, people with accents, whose first language is not English. All of us are part of this community. But listening is not enough. It is time for white folks to look critically at structures that do not help them neither in their daily life. White supremacy culture has used forever pitting white poor people against Black and brown as a tool to keep everyone down. and the few in power. It is complex and it is real. The roots go deeper. We only need to look at the drug addictions and suicide rates in this community, the housing issues, the homelessness, the lack of well-paid jobs, the empty business buildings, the payday predatory loans, the lack of representation in local government, the zero accountability that damage all of us. And then indigenous, Black, and people of color become the scapegoats of the failures of a socioeconomic system founded in racial inequality. We have not seen the George Floyd's or the Tamir Rice's terrible experiences here, but systemic racism permeates institutions and our society. I am glad the police is nice in this community, but being nice is not being anti-racist. The judges or the district attorney being nice does not mean they are free of bias and prejudice. It
30
does not
seconds.
mean they see us as equal. I ask the City Council to provide staff directions to bring back a resolution that includes the views of Black, Indigenous, and people of color for adopting a resolution later. We are facing two big public health crises, COVID and racism. During crisis, there are opportunities. This is an opportunity for all of us to grow together.
Thank you. Your
Thank you.
your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mercedes.
Thanks, Mercedes.
All right, Mayor, Thad would be the next person up.
Hi. I've looked at both of the resolutions A and B. I can live with resolution A with the exception of removing the last whereas. Resolution A talks about condemning racism. And I think if we're going to talk about condemning the use of excessive force, that should maybe be in a different resolution. With resolution B, it's kind of a catch-all. It starts out with condemning condemning racism, but then it goes to supporting the First Amendment, then supporting the police, then supporting peaceful protest, and then condemning excessive force. It's kind of a catch-all of a little bit of everything. So if we're going to adopt one of these resolutions, I would suggest adopting resolution A and considering dropping the last whereas, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Doug.
And next up, Mayor, would be Karen.
Go ahead, Karen. We're listening.
Karen, you need to unmute your line.
If not, Doug, we can come back.
I think she's unmuted now. There.
Hello. I am a white mother who raised 2 children of color in this community for the past 22 years, and where I'm very happy to see that this resolution is being considered. My greatest concern is that it's just words that will be voted on, and if passed, how will it be brought into action? My children have experienced racism in the medical field, in the police, in their schools, from politicians, within the community at large, in the retail industry. Racism exists here, and we can pass a resolution, but that's not going to solve the problem. I support both what Don and Mercedes said about needing to listen to the voices of the people of color in this community. What I would encourage you to do is to create a group to explore this, to listen to those voices, and to come back with an actual action plan of how are we going to eliminate racism in this community? How are we going to ensure that our people of color that live here and our people of color who travel into our community are safe and feel welcomed? So I encourage you to do more than pass something that is just a set of words. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last call for anybody who'd like to speak. Please use the raise your hand function or press *9. I'm looking at the pictures right now. Oh, I see Carly Fox would like to speak, Mayor. No.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that Tuolumne County is finally having this conversation. I obviously think it's long overdue. As others have said, I think Resolution B is just to put it simply, unacceptable at this point. As far as I know, there is not a structural system that has historically oppressed law enforcement in our nation or in our county. So I don't think essentially writing them a thank you letter is appropriate at this point. And as others have also said, I hope that we can communicate with our communities of color, our indigenous communities in our county, to make a resolution that actually has a commitment towards structural changes. I was born and raised in Tuolumne County. I graduated from Columbia Elementary, Sonora High. I really don't remember learning much about structural racism, about white supremacy, about white privilege. I think that was really unacceptable. I also grew up going to Calvary Chapel, the local church that recently just invited the leader of a hate group, leader of the Family Research Council, which also has ties to white supremacist groups if you research it. These ideas are deeply entrenched in our county, in our churches. We continue to hear pastors say racist things at the pulpit. And lastly, I would just bring up the state of Jefferson that has a significant presence in our county. And I know there are local politicians that at the very least are sympathetic to state of Jefferson. And we've seen time and time again, leaders of state of Jefferson making racialized comments. So I think that this is a wonderful start, but we have much more work to do. And I hope, as others have said, that we will come up with a resolution that actually does a little bit more than just acknowledging racism within our nation and certainly within Tuolumne County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we have Scott who has raised his hand.
Go ahead, Scott. We are listening.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to start by just, reiterating what Carly just touched on, and Don and Karen and everybody else that really appreciate seeing this conversation happen in Tuolumne County. I too was born and raised here and do believe that it is very much long overdue. Going through our public school system, the version of history that we get is very much through the white lens and the way the brain works, the way the mind works. This tends to structure a story about the country that we grew up in that is just not the reality for a lot of people that don't live with white skin. And I don't think that we address that at all in our county. I think it's not uncommon to drive around different parts of Tuolumne County and see Confederate flags. You see them at people's properties. There have been flags that have showed up on campus at Sonora High School. And these banners end up getting defended under kind of a bastardized veil of freedom of speech. And if you really look at the rest of the world, I think a good comparison to that would be Nazi Germany, where displays of a Nazi flag or Nazi symbols or proliferation of any Nazi symbolism at all is condoned and to the point where it's illegal. And I think it's an apt comparison because when you look at the influence of Nazi Germany, there were about 6 million Jews who were killed during that time. And if you look at the history of racism in the United States and the history of slavery, and racism actually as a construct, something that we've made up to justify an enslavement of people, there were about 10 to 15 million people that were brought from Africa to the United States. And it's estimated that about 40 to 50% of those were killed in the transportation process. And when the Emancipation Proclamation came through, there were about 4 million enslaved Americans that were living here. And so the scale of the death toll and the scale of the oppression is actually quite similar. And last I checked in US history, we don't have any ties in California and Tuolumne County to the Confederacy. And so the only logical reason for displaying that sort of symbolism is a racially charged agenda And it's an agenda that, you know, if you are a person of color in our country, the Confederate flag is something that looks like the Nazi flag would for someone who's of Jewish descent. And so my concern with these resolutions is that they're lip service, that they don't actually go into addressing the systematic issues that we have in our country and locally. And I would like to also see, as part of the new resolutions drafted up, I would like to see action items in terms of how these things will be enforced, how the police will be involved with this, how community engagement will happen, and those sorts of things. So I appreciate your time in beginning this conversation in Tuolumne County. I do believe that it is long overdue, but very inspired by the fact that it is happening.
Thank you very much. Just as a side note, there was some Confederate activity in California at one time. That's just in history books. At one point, federal troops were moved into Fort Miller in Fresno County because there was beginning to be a Confederate takeover. So it's closer to home than what we think, unfortunately.
There is some of that in our history.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, the next name, and I'll get to you, Marilyn Graham, but is Elizabeth Wilkie?
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So thank you. I just want to say thank you for the beginnings of a dialogue regarding racism in Tuolumne County and how to combat that. And I want to thank Dawn and Mercedes and Karen and that. And Scott and Carly. Yeah. But I want to reiterate that it is important to have voices other than those on the council be a part of the resolution. And while it's a great start, I think we need to have there's still a lot of work that needs to happen. And I definitely hope that the council will take a look at people's voices and marginalized people's voices and listen to what they have to say and how the resolution needs to reflect their experiences here in Tuolumne County. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then next would be Marilyn Graham.
Thank you. And I applaud the other speakers. I like the resolution 2020A. I'm thinking that the second whereas might be changed. We believe violence that stems from prejudice, bigotry, racism, and hate have no place in our community, and so are committed to speaking against racism in all forms. And violence can be in so many different ways, as many of the speakers have already attested to. But I would like to go back to the initial recommendation and make some observations on that. And I would like to see this considered. Recommendation 1, to consider the approval of a resolution by the Sonora City Council condemning racism, and 2, to provide direction to staff on how the resolution shall be implemented and to whom it will be addressed, and 3, to finalize the implementation of the plan of this resolution by November 15th, December 1st, something like that. I have a bachelor's degree in sociology from 1970. Years ago, I learned about, SNCC, Congress of Racial Equality, of course, NAACP. And these were concepts to me that were like, okay, I need to learn these to pass the test. Since 1970, I've learned so much more, and then have another degree. beyond that. But it's not an academic thing. I'm white. I go through the world in a way that I'm never considered as being an issue. And I know that. So I'd like to be a part of the solution. I really would. The time has come in such a big way. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's the last hand I have raised. I'm going to scan through the pictures real quick and just
Hey,
make.
Hang on, Doug.
Doug, hold on. We got Councilmember Such has a question for the last individual.
Are you there?
Marilyn, are you there listening?
Yes, yes.
Marilyn, what is your name? What, your name's Marilyn, what is your last name?
Graham.
Graham? Graham?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. That was it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One last call, Mayor. If you'd like to raise your hand and participate, please click that button or press *9. I'm going to scroll through the pictures one last time to see if anybody is vigorously waving. I don't see anybody else vigorously waving, and I don't see any other hands, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback, for your comments, for your statements. I'll bring it back to the council now. Who would like to go first? Councilmember Segerstrom.
Well, I really appreciate the impassioned responses that we've gotten from the community and the enthusiasm that there is a need for a resolution and there is a need for a solution. And I also, thoroughly endorse having a panel of community members that can contribute to our to the resolution. And I noticed a lot of people were talking about Tuolumne County. I'm not sure, our purview is Sonora, but I think that there's a lot we can do here. I also recognize that it's 5 white people talking about racism when we don't really, experience those kinds of things. I've lived in an area where I've had many friends and colleagues who were, Asian, Black, Latino, but Sonora is a really different environment. I mean, you can lose yourself in just a kind of a white existence. So I'm glad that they think that there's good starts, but I think that we need to move, we need to think forward. We need to think about solutions and not just resolutions.
Excuse me. I raised my hand and I was not acknowledged.
Doug?
It wasn't.
Not sure if I was missed or what happened.
Yeah, no one here saw your hand raised. I have 2 people looking for that. Doug, did you see this individual's hand raised?
He's on mute, but I've been looking. I didn't see it unless the mayor wants to.
I was using the
oh, that's
the clap symbol.
Oh, instead of the hand raise symbol. If the mayor would like to entertain the public comment.
I think in this case it'd probably be appropriate. It's the council, rest of the council feels. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Mayor and City Council. I'm not a long-term resident, so I can not only speak from my personal experience as a California resident, and I would like to simply bring some perspective from a different political vantage point. I think everybody who spoke just now all agreed on their opinions, and they were very aligned in, fairly straightforward way. I think if, somebody mentioned The Guardian, and compare that to the New York Times. I think if you read the New York Times, you'll get the same exact opinion that was just voiced by just about every citizen that spoke. And I have a different perspective. I don't think that this conversation is productive. I think that there has been a demonization of white people during this conversation, during a conversation that's purportedly, examines itself to be anti-racist. And if we're not judging ourselves, if we're judging ourselves not by the color of our skins, but by, our character, the content of our character, as Martin Luther King said, then we ought to be able to have the conversation and say, actually, it's not the city's job to single out different races or different cultures and make one to be, to have more or less privilege than another. There's nothing in the Constitution of this country that allows you to ban speech. So I would like, I think that the city council and concerned citizens ought to be able to come up with a better suggestion than saying we should be less racist. I think it's very vague. Last time I checked, as abhorrent as many may find the Confederate flag or comparing that to the Nazi flag, last time I checked, this is a country that supports and promotes freedom of speech, and that's freedom of speech for everybody. Everybody. So that means it's not the police, it's not the police department's job to enforce some kind of anti-racist ideology that singles out people who maybe they are hateful, maybe they're not. It's up for people to debate that in the public square, to have measured conversations. Police, as last time I checked, they actually arrest people who commit violence against other people. So if there's violence being committed, then those people will be arrested. But aside from that, racism is not a crime. Now, it may be abhorrent, but we have First Amendment rights in this country. And I think that people ought to be able to voice their opinions, and things need to be debated fairly and openly, and involving the city council or the police in some kind of anti-free speech action is, to me, as abhorrent as anything that was brought up today. And the freedoms that this country promotes were hard won against tyranny for decades and centuries because they were able to speak up. People who felt oppressed were able to speak up, and that should continue to be the case. And it is not the job of institutions to take the side of one people or another in the public square. It is the job of the public to stand up for themselves. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other hands raised or?
I see one other hand raised now, Mayor. I see the hand of Merrill Soto.
We are listening.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that Douglas White had the courage to speak up for his opinion, which differs from most of the people who are in attendance here now. And I have to agree that freedom of speech has to cover speech that we don't like, as well as speech that we do, or it is not freedom of speech. However, I do not think that the resolutions that we are considering, or the future formation of resolutions that are under consideration, are just about freedom of speech. They are addressing the fact that there is a systemic oppression of people of color. If you live as a person of color, then no one has to convince you of that. And if you don't, then it's really hard to fathom what that's like, which is why it's important to be educated. It's important to learn about those things. It's important for governments that are responsible for the safety and the well-being of an entire community to be well educated about those things and prepared to deliver even-handed and just services to all of the people that live in that community. And while I do agree that we do have a good law enforcement team working here in Sonora City and in our county, I think that there are still opportunities for growth and for city services and for our community as a whole to move forward in a way that will make Sonora stand out on the map for better reasons than for having a group of folks who are angry and afraid, trying to suppress the voices of those who have been subject to great violence and harm for, oh, I don't know, hundreds of years. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just correct the record, that was county citizen who was speaking. I'm the city attorney, so that wasn't my comment.
Okay, is there anyone else with a hand clapping or a hand raising or anything like that?
I'm going through the pictures right now. Nothing on the screen with raised hands or anything. I think we're good, Mayor.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the council. I believe Ann had spoken, so did you have anything else?
Well, just a little note on, I did look up the Bill of Rights in the First Amendment. And, you know, the First Amendment, the Bill of Rights were instituted, added to the Constitution in 1788. In 1863, well, that was when slaves were freed and supposedly just, you know, got their right to free speech. And then 1865 was Juneteenth when the last slaves found out they were free. And then it was until 1920 when women were allowed to vote and actually had freedom of speech. So suppression of freedom of speech is pretty endemic. You know, 1965 was the Voting Rights Act. And so supposedly all this is moving us along to a greater understanding of one another and a more integrated and representative government, but maybe not. So I appreciate everybody's input. That was really fascinating to hear the complexities of our little town. And, you know, I think it behooves us to move forward on trying to find a resolution and solution that seems to fit the mold for us.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. It's okay for somebody in an industry where it's very simple. You can do the job or you can't. I don't see racism. I don't see our police here having any problems with enforcement and that type of thing. So hearing the perspective of probably 95% of our callers is very interesting and in some ways maybe eye-opening. And if it's something I'm not even seeing, then in that sense troubling. But that's why I thought in light of Dawn's letter and then everything else that we should look at this a little more globally. And one of the difficulties about this is if one disagrees just about in any way, all of a sudden you're a racist. And I can disagree with some of the things, and I see most of this coming from what I think of as left-wing ideologues that I don't agree with generally. And so they say, well, we want to do something with our police. We want action plans. Well, maybe we have some problems, but let's identify a problem before we have action plans. And then some of this, like Resolution 2020A, when we get something like we believe the answer this time was silence is to be complicit. That's something that it's a formulation that I end up really resenting. And it's because it can be twisted to mean almost anything that you disagree with me with. If I ask, have you come out and spoken against the violence, the looting, the calls to kill cops by all these demonstrations? If you say yes, well, then you're safe. If you say no, then you're complicit with the murder of cops. And to me, this is sort of a formula to corner people into saying things that they might not want to. So I think that must be stricken or clarified to say something a lot more precise. The way it is now, it just seems like what I think of as faculty lounge gaming, where they can corner people ideologically, but where it's not moving us forward at all. And I would like to be included in the working group, should we make one. I'm interested in it. I think one of the reasons why I proposed this is because our people here are great. When you look at our protests, we ended up with no violence. We had great policing. And the First Amendment is by far and away our most important amendment. It's protected by the Second Amendment, but if you can't say what you believe, then we cannot grow as a society. We can't resolve things. And if you just bury and hide problems, they will come back, and they'll usually come back with a vengeance. Maybe that's what we're seeing now in all, all of these Black Lives Matters burning down these cities. That's awful. We've been spared that, and I'm glad we are. But, maybe that's just pushing it under the rug. I think we do benefit if we can speak for all of our people and work for, well, I said people, citizens and community members, that working with them would be a lot better than 5 white folk, imagining what we think is right or wrong. So I would like to be included on that with most likely Colette, but I'm done. Thank you.
Jim or Councilmember Such or Councilmember Garavena?
Well, I think we have got quite a bit of input from the people in the community that's actually been affected by it. And I think that's very important, that if we're going forward, that whatever we do, we actually reach out and discuss this with the actual people that have been involved. Tonight, I can't vote for either one resolution. I think we need to go and do this, look for, as Councilmember Segerstrom said, she said, look for a resolution, look for a solution. I like the second part of that. I think a resolution may not even be the final best thing we can do. We can take advice from the people that are most clearly affected by it, and not even do it in a form as a resolution, but actually as a form of forums and other things. So I don't think we need to be tied to a resolution. This needs further baking, clearly. And having some sort of ad hoc committee to find out what that solution is and include those people is, I think, paramount to what we need to be doing here. Being as you all know, I'm in a mixed racial relationship, and ever since that happened, my eyes have been wide open. It's a lot different. You see things that you you wouldn't even think of. And so there is racism here, and we need to find a solution to help educate the folks in our community that don't appear to understand it or see it, what that truly is, I think. And people may argue that it's not the part of the city council to do that, but someone's got to do it. We're having issues now where in our societies are blowing up over issues such as what happened in Minneapolis. So it's come to the forefront, and but coming back to our part of it, we need to have a solution that works locally for the people that live here, for our constituents. And I think engaging those people that some of those that spoke tonight, is a very important thing. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Councilmember Such.
Well, I couldn't be more pleased than how this is played out tonight. It was really, my intention was to start a conversation about the problem of racism in our community and our country. And I do believe that silence is being complicit, and I include myself in that. We have all witnessed, at least if not personally, but then on the news, of violence against mostly African American Black men, and have said nothing. And we have a responsibility to speak out. That's why I wanted a resolution, because I think if this council has any power, this is where it should be exercised in our community. I did reach out to then Mayor Garaventa to help me with this resolution, because you're with a woman of color. I also spoke to someone who I think you may know, Sylvia Roberts.
Sylvia Roberts, sure.
I had a long conversation with her because she wrote a guest opinion. I thought it was just a couple of years ago. It was actually 5 years ago, when there was a young high school student who had a Confederate flag in the back of his pickup truck. And it was a huge issue in town, because the question was whether he had a right not to fly his flag, but to park that truck with his flag in it on school property. And Sylvia Roberts wrote a breathtaking guest opinion to the Democrat that I'd like to read tonight. I asked her permission to read this. And actually that was 5 years ago that happened. When I see a Confederate flag in the back of a truck, I have no way of knowing that it belongs to a 16-year-old boy. I've been told by one of his teachers is a model student and a really nice, respectful young man with an innocent crush in an old TV show. My first reaction, in all honesty, is very personal and very defensive, because this could just as easily represent someone who possibly might wish me harm, or at the very least, disrespect. I've lived in Tuolumne County for the better part of 25 years as one of its few Black residents, and with the exception of a couple N-words thrown my way in the early days, I have suffered absolutely no racial troubles in this community. I'm active in community affairs and have made a lot of truly good friends throughout this and neighboring counties. It is not normally necessary for me to point out that my great-grandparents were slaves, that my grandparents struggled through the aftermath of Reconstruction, that my parents suffered the effects of a Jim Crow South, and that I am a veteran of the Civil Rights era. But because of this heritage, I see that young man's flag through a very different filter than do many of my neighbors. For those who say the flag is a symbol of Southern heritage and pride, I must remind them that to exhibit pride in the antebellum South is to embrace the concept of slavery. This is non-negotiable, because none of those things that are fondly remembered about the Old South would have been possible without the millions of African Americans who are collectively dismissed in history books, Because their own history has been given no value, it is easy not to relate to them as individuals of any significance. It must be remembered, however, that it would have been impossible for the South to have developed into the economic juggernaut that it became without free labor. There are those who insist that the Civil War was not fought over slavery, but over states' rights. In truth, the two are inseparable. The right of the South most desperately needed to maintain was the right to keep slaves so that its economic base did not collapse. Those same Southern Pride supporters are not envisioning another ill-starred event of Southern history, the beatings, lynchings, the live burnings that replaced the immorality of slavery. These proceedings were often offered as public entertainment, sometimes attended by hundreds, including men, women, and children. Only a few years before the Civil Rights Movement, such events were commemorated on postcards and sent through the US mail. For proof of this, Google, quote, "without sanctuary," end quote, but be prepared for extremely graphic images, not for the faint of heart. During the Civil Rights era, the Confederate flag, as we recognize it today, became a symbol of the Ku Klux Klan and all that represented keeping Black people segregated and oppressed. A simple Google search titled "Confederate flag and civil rights" will result in image after image of the flag being held aloft in opposition to human rights. Violence remained a tool of this opposition in the form of fire hoses, dogs, and church bombings. My great-grandparents were people who were owned like cattle. They were an anonymous but fundamental part of building that great South that many want to see rise again. Against terrific odds, by 1904, both my grandparents completed college, yet their children were raised in the Jim Crow South, where if you were Black, the slightest mishap could literally cost your life with no consequences to the ones who took it. I grew up seeing the first light at the end of the tunnel, marching and protesting to promote the nonviolent ideals of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Our history has sculpted racial relationships and reactions in this country, both consciously and unconsciously. I believe there is a vast difference between being a racist and acting on racist principles. The former is blatant, intentional, and unapologetic. The latter can be blatant and is just as destructive, but is generally based on ignorance rather than hate due to the lack of incorrect information. I hope the Young Men's School will use this opportunity as a teachable moment and help its students navigate the complex course of its issue. Had the Confederate flag and states' rights prevailed during the Civil War, I have to wonder where I would be today. Certainly not here with a university degree and the right to speak my opinion on this emotionally charged matter in a public forum. So yes, as an American citizen, that young man is well within his rights to fly the Confederate flag, and I will stand first in line beside him to support the right of freedom of speech. But he should know, if he chooses to display that symbol, that it will always fly in controversy, because there will always be people like me and those who know my side of the story who will forever protest its existence. It's unrealistic to expect me to respect it or to be anything other than offended by its presence. That's it. I thought that was a pretty moving writing about the experience of an African American in face of a Confederate flag. I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I said it is.
Very much
And
so.
one can only applaud her continued belief in the First Amendment right to do it and her standing beside him for his rights, even if it is wrong. Just like the ACLU went to court and won to march through New York with, not the ACLU, but the Nazi Party to carry their flag through New York. It's hateful and awful, but part of open free speech for everyone. And we're one of the only countries I know of that has free speech guaranteed.
It's guaranteed, but it's not necessarily applied. And I think that's what, a lot of these, minorities, they're marginalized. I mean, they aren't given the opportunity to speak, or they don't have the access to legal teams to get them the permit to march through New York. So free speech is, it's easy to point to, but it's really hard to enact. Because as you pointed out in your resolution, people have to listen too. And
The speech they don't like.
yeah.
That's
Yes,
what's
yeah,
protected.
yeah,
It's not
and
the easy speech that everyone
yeah,
agrees with.
yeah. So, I mean, I agree with that too, that you should, listen to many opinions. But I mean, most of these people, their opinions and their speech has been smothered. So they're, I mean, we can laud freedom of speech all we want, but if no one lets them talk.
Well, as soon as we go for political correctness, we're shutting down speech.
Yeah. Well, I don't even think that's political correctness. I think
so
that's
I
listening.
have,
So,
okay.
whatever.
I have a question for the counselor, actually. Are hate crimes and threats of violence protected by free speech?
No, hate crimes are not protected by free speech. So
And that includes threats of violence?
that includes threats of violence. Now, threats of violence can be tricky, right? Because is it a real threat or is it not? And so that's where the discretion of a judge and or jury would come in, as well as police. I mean, we've all been in high school and heard somebody say, "I'm going to kill you," and it really just meant they were going to hit you or something like that. So, or they were mad at you. So I think there's some discretion that's involved in there, and it's situational. But that is not protected free speech.
Thank you. Go ahead,
I just
Councilman.
would like to add that throughout history, Black people have been lynched for free speech, for trying to speak freely. So it's not, it's protected for some of us, but not even.
Well, there was a long time, and this is where this country has been quite magnificent in very slowly, but still self-correcting and moving forward. And this is part of that process, obviously, that moving forward and trying to live up to the promise and the aspiration of our Constitution, that these rights are granted to all. And yes, they have been mistreated. So have the Indians. So have just about everyone else. When you look at, I mean, historically,
That same iPhone again.
It's a poltergeist.
Yeah. It's a good German word. But anyway, I mean, every people has been overrun and enslaved one way or another. The Romans did it to all of Europe. The North Africans enslaved, the Barbary pirates enslaved people. And we're moving forward. We can be good for it. Gracious. Lisa and I.
Yeah.
So, did anybody else want to speak?
No, I said what I'm going to say. I think we need to move on.
Yeah. So I actually agree with having some sort of ad hoc committee. I'll give my 2 cents. My first marriage was a woman of Mexican descent, and we had 4 children, 4 beautiful children. And I remember it really opened my eyes because I'm kind of clueless in all this, but not only did I lose friends over marrying her, but she lost friends over marrying me. It's just what happened. I got told at one time, "Why didn't you marry one of your own?" Stuff like that. I go on with the names, but where I grew up in Virginia, you saw a lot of racism there. It really truly worked both ways, but the fact is, it was racism, was racism, was racism. None of it is right. All of it is wrong, period. Growing up, I think the first taste of racism that I saw was what happened to Justice Clarence Thomas and what the media did. I didn't understand it, and I started understanding it then. Then when I couldn't wrap my head around, Mark, you brought up the ACLU earlier. At one time, the Klan, which at one time was very prevalent in the South, I honestly don't know the numbers now. I'd be really curious to see how many are still out there. It's just a horrible organization. We're still burning crosses in Virginia, and Virginia had enacted a law against burning crosses. You could not burn a cross. Guess who came to their defense? The American Civil Liberties Union, using the First Amendment. I've never heard anyone talk about it, and it angers me because even though it is the First Amendment, those are things that shouldn't be going on, at least in my opinion. I mean, it's a horrible symbol of racism, and I could go on and on. So I'm more than welcome if the council sees fit to, have some sort of committee. But I mean, every single one of us has been touched by some sort of racism, regardless of what color we are, whether we had a friend, married to somebody, in a relationship with somebody, somehow, somewhere, we've all been touched by this. So I think we should move forward with something stronger than the resolutions that we have. And see where we go from there. I think good input is going to have something really good. Maybe Dawn can can help out with this, because I think the email that I read was very strong, very powerful, and it made complete sense to me. So I guess at this juncture, I'll ask what the council would like to do.
I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, okay.
Unless people want to still have more to say. Sorry. I'd like to make a motion unless people still have more to say. I'd like to make a motion, I guess, to direct staff to form a committee and include many people who spoke tonight. I'd be happy to reach out to them to bring back a resolution that is more appropriate for our time than either of the ones presented.
Okay, so your motion is to form a committee, you said, to direct staff.
Many of the people who spoke tonight.
To form a committee and
And include many of the people who spoke tonight.
Would that resolution include 2 council members?
Yes.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing the motion correctly, if the mayor would then select the 2 members of the council to serve on that committee, if that motion goes with the second.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second. I will second the motion.
Okay, so I guess we'll call for a roll call vote.
Doug, do you want me to repeat or are we okay with the motion?
I think we're okay with the motion. I think I know.
Okay, just want to make sure the public understood the motion. Mayor Hawkins.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa.
Aye.
Councilmember Such.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sagerstrom.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like it passes 5-0. So,
And Doug, do we want any action on the council members that will be serving on that committee by the mayor?
If they want to make specific appointments as part of this, then of council members, and if they want to delineate what the process should look like for selection, then this would be an appropriate time to do that.
okay, so I would like to see Councilmember Such on there, as long as that's you would like to do that.
I would love to.
And then I would like to see Mayor Pro Tem Plummer on that also. I'm really proud of this council right now. I am really blown away. I thought there would be, I didn't know exactly what to expect. So I'm really, really happy.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. iPhone, you turn on. I'm going to have to kick you off if you can't stay muted.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so do I get a consensus on the 2 council members, or does that require a vote?
Works for me.
Okay.
I believe it requires a vote.
It doesn't require a vote but do you want to give some direction on how you want to pick the additional members of this committee?
That's something I haven't thought about. I think it should be either a 5 or 7 member committee. 5 would probably move faster, but I think 7 would be more diverse. And
I think so. And
oh, yes.
I think because 2 council members are white, we should at least have a 7-member committee.
Okay.
Mayor, can I suggest if we're going to do that, maybe it would be most appropriate to have each council member pick a representative to be on there. That might be the easiest.
Yeah, that works for me.
So you have the 2 council members, and then you have 5 members of the public under that suggestion, which each council member submitting a name to serve on the committee.
Oh, terrific idea.
Yes.
May I ask that it be more specific than that? I think they should be people of color.
Okay.
That was the direction the public certainly was giving us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know Mercedes talked about people who don't speak English, or that their language, it may be clear, but it's, it's accented. And I know someone who I feel has been, overlooked consistently in the 15 years that she's been here because of her accent. And that would be the person that I would propose, but she does have to be white. I don't know, that's not acceptable. I'll understand that, but
We could probably get more than just 2 minutes to think about as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the suggestion is a good one. If we come back either when this is being formed or at the next meeting, suggestions. But I think we shouldn't feel compelled to do that. I mean, come up with names.
And I think a lot goes into merit also. A lot goes into merit and content and character. But I
have to want to serve on the committee too.
City Attorney White, could you please remove iPhone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's cool. Councilmember Such.
And perhaps they should be people who are disenfranchised in some way. Not,
Yeah.
seriously disenfranchised, not, I mean, we're not going to staff with a bunch of white people.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not. I don't think that. Just looking at the makeup of the council and the general tilt, I don't think that's a possibility even. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Mayor, just for the record, we have a hand up now from TJ Rogers, but for the record, you've closed public comment, and so
Yes.
So that's why that hand hasn't been taken up.
Okay. So, is there any other action we need to take on this? We basically said we're going to have a committee. It's going to be a certain amount of people. 2 council members are sitting on it.
The direction I have from council is we are forming a committee with council members Such and Plummer serving on that committee. The committee to be made up by a selection of each council member at their choosing, and to bring back a resolution that is agreed upon by that committee. That's the direction I have from council.
Yep. Okay. So that's the end of new business. We put public comment on non-agenda items. This is a non-agenda item to the end. If anyone would like to speak on any non-agenda items, the public may address the council on any item of
You
public
guys, can you
interest,
be quiet?
not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action can be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation for non-agenda items. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
So I'll call on you, Jeff, in just a second. Just to give the little spiel, if you'd like to participate, please use the raise your hand function that can be found under participants, or press *9 if you are on a phone. With that, Mayor, I have Jeff Muzio who would like to talk.
Excellent. Jeff, we're listening.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to talk. congratulations to the new council members and the new mayor, and good luck on your journey. I kind of sound like a little bit less important than all the items on the agenda today, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because it's important to my family. I just wanted to quickly give you guys an update of how the Hazy Bulldog is doing. We have hired another employee this month, and so that brings our employees up to 7 total, and we did lose 1 over the last month, which brings us to 20% over our estimated employment figures when we originally gave you our business proposal. Our sales tax are up 145% from the original projected totals. And we are looking to hire 1 more person over the next month. And to give you an idea how the hiring process has gone, we've had over 250 applications for the 2 jobs that we have offered so far. And we're not even opening up the application process for the 3rd job here because of how successful it is. So just to give you guys an idea of how eager this community is to work in the cannabis community. I also wanted to ask again for the council to consider recreational use. Calaveras County has gone recreational and has already started pulling business away from our county. They're also allowing grows and other ways to vertically integrate in the cannabis business, as well as every other bordering county now, which puts Hazy Bulldog at a tremendous disadvantage. When the volume of your sales goes up, you can lower your prices. When you open up recreational market, your volume of sales traditionally doubles, which means everybody will be able to afford offer products at a much more competitive price. These companies are already delivering into our county, and we at the Hazy Bulldog see the impact. This impact results in lower sales for our store and lower revenue for the city. This is only going to get worse over time as these companies will be able to manufacture, grow, transport, and sell their product. I encourage this council to put on the agenda changing from medical only to recreational use. I also encourage this council to add manufacturing to that discussion. I'd like to invest a substantial amount of money into the city and potentially multiply the tax revenue of the city by 4 times the amount I'm already projected to have. Thank you very much for allowing me to give this update. And once again, I know all the other issues in town seem to be much more important, but thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Mayor, just for the record, we expect to have something on an upcoming agenda shortly.
Excellent. Is there anyone else? Any other raised hands, clapped hands?
I don't see any, Mayor.
I don't see any raised hand, clapped hands, or people waving their hands.
Excellent. So we will close public comment. Communications, there are none. Council member and department head reports. Go with city attorney.
Nothing tonight. I think most of the stuff that we're watching has been covered under the COVID update. That has obviously become a pretty darn dynamic thing, and it's accelerated at a speed that we didn't project in terms of scaling things back. We do feel good about Tuolumne County for the moment, but we'll be really curious to see what happens, particularly over the last 2 weeks, because we do know that July 4th was a bit active, let's just say. So so we'll be really closely watching those numbers, but that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. I see Rochelle's face. Rochelle.
Hey, yeah, I just want to let you guys know that we've been talking about it for a while, but we officially posted on the website today that we are canceling Magic of the Night. I mean, we've known it for a while, but we did want to make the public aware of it. There was just no way that we could move forward with that event. So our next big event that we'll be looking at is the Christmas parade, and God forbid we have to cancel that. So hopefully by then we're beyond this and we're able to get everybody together and celebrate the holidays. So anyway, I just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
Rochelle, I'm just curious how the farmer's market is going.
It's going fine. It's been, I was down there the last 2 Saturdays. It was, there's not as many people coming down to the market. I thought Saturday was fairly slow. So hopefully we keep a steady trickle coming in, because that is a source of income for our vendors that are down there. So everybody is doing well. I mean, there's plenty of room for people to walk around and feel safe down there. And we have a lot of new vendors this year, so.
I just wanted to tell you the tamale vendor is really good.
Yeah, he's well liked. Yeah, so We have some others, but right now with the social distancing, we're gonna hold off a little bit so before we add anybody else in.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there anything from Chief New? She's still on there.
Nothing further to report. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Police Chief Vanderweel.
Yeah, I have nothing to report. Just a congratulations to Matt, Mark, and Ann, and welcome, Councilmember Segerstrom. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything from, I'm sorry, my head is pounding. I've been like calling. Yes, anything from Chris Gorski? Is he on here? Okay.
Mr. Gorski.
That's okay.
Disappeared.
Anything from our administrator?
I don't have any additional thing. I will just say from Mr. Gorski, he is plugging away at our new finance system, so I'm really happy about that. I know it's an extremely daunting process, so really happy that he's working on that.
Excellent. Have I forgotten anybody other than council members? Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
Thank you. Nothing really of great import to report, but we had a wonderful 4th. It's a great country. I'm thrilled to have Mary Rose safely back in town, and that we no longer have
Did
any.
she go to Jamestown?
That we no longer have any cases in the hospital. Yay! So that's it.
Thank you. Brand new council member
I
Segerstrom.
have nothing to report, but I'm happy to be here.
Doesn't
Thank
it feel good? I mean, it feels really good. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
That'll be nice.
Councilmember Such.
On the agenda for next time, I would like toilets in the homeless camp, please. Or discussion about toilets in the homeless camp. That's it.
Nothing to report other than that the Transportation Council will not be meeting this month, so we won't have that meeting. Other than that, nothing to report.
I did have one thing I forgot to say. Thank you very much, Mary Rose, for suggesting the League of City Conference. I attended 3 days and it was hugely helpful, and I think very the insights into other city workings and how they cope with problems was really immeasurably helpful. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Valuable people when I was able to attend and stuff. There are a couple that I want to catch up on while I can, now that I'm not laboring.
So I just want to say welcome, Ann.
Thank you.
Congratulations again, Mark. It's a big honor to be up here. This is my 3rd term, and it's mind-blowing. I just can't thank everyone enough. I make it very clear when I was running, it doesn't matter where you fall politically, ideologically, anywhere. Racially, doesn't matter to me. And I know it don't matter to this council either. We represent you, and that's what we do as a council. And as your new mayor, that's exactly what I plan on doing. I look forward to dialogue. I look forward to conversation, and I look forward to getting things done. Mary Rose, I'm going to be bugging you in the next few months because I've got some ideas how we're going to move forward with business and address some issues with neighborhoods and especially property crime that appears to be up. So I look forward to working with the chief and the fire chief. But really, it is humbling being here. And I just thank everyone, and it's getting late. So I say this is the end of the meeting, and everyone have a great evening.
Bravo, Mr. Mayor.
So Ann, I wasn't able to tell you earlier, we do have an employee with a